Chapter 895. That night, Chu Qingyan did not sleep well. She had another nightmare. The flames of war raged, and the person she loved the most fell in the flames. She instantly woke up with a start, her back covered in cold sweat. What greeted her eyes was a field of candlelight. She did not realize where she was. After a while, she rubbed her temples and looked around. Where's Big Ice Cube? Wasn't she accompanying him? Why did she fall asleep instead? Just as she straightened up, a piece of clothing slipped from her shoulder. She recognized that it was Big Ice Cube's clothing. Thus, she cleared her throat and called out, "Someone come." The curtain was lifted, and a person walked in. "This subordinate is here." Chu Qingyan was not surprised to see Jean X in. "What time is it now? Where's His Highness?" "It's already 4:45. His Highness is at the military drill ground." Jean Xian replied. "It's already 4:45? Chu Qingyan immediately jumped up and put away her clothes. As she walked out, she said, "Why didn't you call me?" Jean Xian looked troubled. "Before His Highness left, he told me to let you rest well, so this subordinate did not disturb you." Chu Qingyan shook her head. "Who's the master here? Take me to the military drill ground first." When Chu Qingyan arrived, the huge drill ground was filled with people. She couldn't see the end of the crowd in front of her, nor could she see the end of the crowd behind her. She was shocked at the number of people in the three armies. This was the first time she had seen so many people. However, she was even more surprised by the silence. Everyone was standing upright, not daring to breathe loudly. She did not stop, but kept walking forward until she reached the stone steps. On the last step, her gaze seemed to consciously see the person standing on the stage. Dressed in silver armor, he stood upright in the dusky sky. Burning torches were set up around him. The light from the torches shone on his body, as if covering his silver armor with a layer of fiery red flames. He looked very heroic. This was the first time she saw such a cold and solemn side of him. Even his shadow on the stage was solemn. She understood that the ice cube didn't belong to her alone. He was now the core of the entire army, the hope of the entire Sichuan. Her gaze turned to Hua Ling, Turin, and the others beside her. At this time, they had also changed into armor and looked heroic. However, when their gazes landed on their master, they were filled with admiration. Chu Qingyan couldn't help but smile. At this moment, the big ice cube didn't belong to her alone, but she was prouder than before. This was called sharing the glory of others. She quickly walked to Turin's side, trying to reduce her presence as much as possible. However, she also clearly felt that the atmosphere was not right. Only then did she notice the few people lying on the ground at the front of the drill ground. At this time, they were already on the verge of death. There were deputy generals and ordinary soldiers. Just as she was feeling doubtful, Big Ice Cube spoke. "As a general, you should have self-discipline. As a soldier, you should follow the law. This king had just issued an order last night, yet you ignored it today. Are you dissatisfied with this king? Are you not convinced that this king is leading the three armies?" His voice was as heavy as iron, like the ringing of an ancient bell, spreading throughout the entire drill ground. Everyone held their breaths, not even daring to breathe too hard. This was Sichuan's war god, the hero in the hearts of every soldier who protected their country. They couldn't be happier to be led by him, so how could they be dissatisfied? So most people looked at the people being punished on the ground with displeasure. If it wasn't for these rats, they wouldn't have been questioned by His Royal Highness. With the public's discontent, the soldiers led by the Fu family did not dare to breathe or cry out in pain. They had received orders from their superiors to not let Xiao Su have an easy time and to make things difficult for him before he could lead his troops. Therefore, when they returned, they didn't inform their subordinates to gather. Therefore, when everyone had gathered, they arrived late. They had more people, so Xiao Su did not dare punish them at this time. After all, the law could not punish the majority. However, they did not understand Xiao Su. He was famous for being strict, so when they arrived, a row of soldiers holding military rods was already waiting for them. Every time they were hit, their skin would split open and their flesh would be torn open. They had thought that his actions would shake the morale of the soldiers, But unexpectedly, they had aroused the public's anger. They had wanted to sow discord, but they had been kicked out of the situation and felt the silent rebuke of the crowd. So when Xiao Su questioned them, the soldiers of the Fu family all lowered their heads. Although they were unwilling, they could not directly confront him at this time. After being punished by the military law, they realized that he now had a large number of soldiers. If he wanted to kill them, it would only be a matter of moving his fingers. They immediately gritted their teeth and did not dare to make a sound. Xiao Su looked away mockingly. If they had dared to directly challenge him at this time, he would have treated them differently. Now, it seemed that they were just cowards who could be swayed by the wind. Since there are no objections, then this king must reiterate one thing. In the face of a great enemy, all of you must unite as one and twist into a rope. If it's like what you've presented in the dossiers and fight on your own, then the enemy won't need to spend too much effort to crush you. Xiao Su's gaze fell on the row of generals in front of him, solemn and stern. As soon as he finished speaking, the generals all lowered their heads in shame. He did not say anything more and ordered the crowd, "Generals, bring your soldiers to the four sides. Then, infantry, step out. Do not unsheathe your weapons. Divide them into two sides. Let me see your strength." With every step they took, Chu Qingyan felt as though the ground was shaking. So this was the principle of strength in numbers. Very quickly, she saw what was called a large-scale battle. Today, her horizons were broadened. This was a battlefield. Although it was only the tip of the iceberg, it was already shocking to her heart. She looked at the person in front of her, only to see him staring down the stage. When it was about time, he would give a new order. Cavalry, step out. Arrow formation, step out. Artillery, step out. Vanguard, step out. When each battalion retreated, they couldn't help but look at the godlike man standing on the stage, hoping to get some information from his expression. Unfortunately, his expression was still indifferent, and they couldn't see any satisfaction or dissatisfaction from him. But for some reason, when they saw him seriously observing the drill, everyone's heart calmed down. Xiao Ran sat on the side of the stage. He had a good view. Confidence came from the heart. Only then could it be shown on the face. This was something he did not see when he was leading. At this moment his gaze fell on the stage. This was the first time he saw the three armies showing such spirit after expending their soldiers. He was shocked. But very quickly he thought of something and looked at the person on the stage. Maybe some people were born with such charisma. They could make people submit from the bottom of their heart and then trust them. His eldest brother, who was indomitable, was the same. Chapter 896. The drill lasted all the way until evening. Xiao Su maintained his original posture and did not move an inch. Only when the battalion changed positions did they see him raise his hand. Everyone returned to their original positions and raised their heads, sincerely and worriedly waiting for his evaluation. Today's drill ends here. This king already knows your abilities. It's neither good nor bad, but it's more than enough to deal with the Southern Blue Army. What you need to do now is to rebuild your faith. A few defeats do not mean anything. It was clearly just a few ordinary words, but when they came out of Xiao Su's mouth, it gave the army an invisible motivation. Each of them let out a sigh of relief, and then their spirits were shaken, and their backs straightened even more. The King of England was right. The Southern Blue Army was only SOSO. As long as they fought this battle with all their heart, they would definitely be able to drive them out. Tonight, except for the battalion in charge of patrolling, rest well. Tomorrow we will set off. Xiao Su did not say anything else and waved his hand to dismiss everyone. Compared to the uncertainty they felt when they came, everyone's footsteps were a bit more resolute. Xiao Su's eyes were light. This was the effect he wanted. Just as Chu Qingyan was about to take advantage of the fact that no one was paying attention to look for him, a figure arrived before her. "Eldest brother, when do you think I will be as outstanding as you?" Xiao Ran looked up at him with a serious look of inquiry. Xiao Su heard him and looked at him, but his gaze went past him and looked at the setting sun in the sky. The morning glow was very beautiful, like a burning flame. Some people do not need to learn how to march and fight. They do not need to do everything to the extreme. As long as they have the world in mind, love the people, know how to use people well, do not listen and believe only one side, and be close to virtuous ministers and stay away from those who are unscrupulous, then there will be many outstanding talents and soldiers who will risk their lives for him, protect the country, and spill their blood on the land. Xiao Ran looked at him blankly. He felt that this answer was not what he wanted, but he rarely saw his eldest brother speak to him so seriously. It was not only because the armor on his body was too dazzling that he suddenly could not see the person in front of him clearly. However, after a long time, he realized that he had made a terrible mistake. As he sat alone on a tall building and looked up at the stars, he suddenly recalled the words that his eldest brother had said to him today. Only then did he realize his mistake. It turned out that his eldest brother had no intention of competing with him for the position of crown prince. He had made his stance clear to him from the very beginning. But at that time he was too stupid to understand the meaning behind his words. Xiao Su did not expect him to understand now. He was still young, and his shoulders were not strong enough to carry heavy responsibilities, so Xiao Su changed the topic. This morning, I saw people coming from Jingdo. Presumably, father wants to summon you back. Tomorrow when we break camp, you can go back to the palace. I will send soldiers to escort you. Hearing these words, Xiao Ran felt bitter in his mouth. He wanted to fight to stay by his eldest brother's side. In the past, he had only been an armchair strategist. Although he had experienced a few battles and more or less learned some experience, it was far from enough. Eldest brother was a good teacher. If he could stay by his side, he would definitely be able to grow quickly. Unfortunately, his father's edict, his mother's insistence, and his injuries made it impossible for him to cause trouble for his eldest brother. In the end, he gave up. Eldest brother, sometimes I feel that as a member of the imperial family, I have no choice. Xiao Ran smiled sadly. Xiao Su looked deeply at him. Since we were born, we do not have the right to be willful. As if saying these words was a bit heavy, Xiao Su paused for a moment. You have already sat for a day. Go back. Xiao Ran was silent. Eldest brother was right. Others only saw their bright and beautiful side, but did not know how heavy the responsibilities they shouldered were. Eldest brother, you can keep the people. Don't worry about me. I will reach Jingdo safely. Xiao Ran said to him before leaving. Xiao Su nodded. Xiao Ran was no longer a child. He did not need to worry. As he turned, Xiao Ran saw Chu Qingyan standing to the side. Her red dress fluttered and was particularly eye-catching. He stepped forward and clasped her wrist. His tone was a bit emotional. Chu Qingyan, it's good to see you. Come with me. Chu Qingyan frowned and looked at his hand. They had only met once. Was it really okay to touch her like this? But before she could break free, the other had already pulled her away. TSK, Xiao Su's gaze landed on their intertwined hands and narrowed his eyes. But someone quickly came forward to report the matter. He could not help but look away. When he looked in that direction again, the two had already disappeared. Where is Ayan? Xiao Su asked Hualing beside him. She seems to have gone to 4th Wangzi's tent. Jin Xian and Su Yi have already followed. Master, you can rest assured. Hualing hurriedly replied, thinking that his master was worried about the little princess's safety. Xiao Su was silent for a moment before responding. Then he led his people to the main tent. At this time, Chu Qingyan had already been dragged into Xiao Ran's tent. When he let go, she finally regained her freedom. With their skills, Chu Qingyan only needed to use a bit of force to break free of his hand. But seeing that he was injured, she did not move. She did not think that an injured person would be so strong. Her wrist was already red. When Xiao Ran let go, he muttered in his heart. This Chu Qingyan was like a little girl. Her wrist was so thin that it seemed like he would break it if he used any force. But he did not think too much about it. He walked into the depths of the tent and under Chu Qingyan's confused gaze, he pulled out a large wooden chest. Chu Qingyan did not know what he was doing, but she still went forward to help. When the wooden chest was dragged to the center, Xiao Ran took a deep breath. Maybe it was because of his wound, he couldn't help but cough a few times. His expression was a bit conflicted. Are you okay? Chu Qingyan saw that his face had turned pale again. She couldn't help but ask. It's nothing. It's just a small injury. Xiao Ran waved his hand, not caring at all. Chu Qingyan sneered in her heart. He wanted to keep up appearances so that he could suffer. Then she patted the wooden chest and asked curiously, "What are these? They're quite heavy." As soon as she said that, she inadvertently saw a suspicious blush from his cheeks to his ears. She was a bit surprised. Do you have a fever? She knew that if a sword wound was not treated properly, it would be easy to have a high fever. As she said that, she naturally wanted to reach out to feel his forehead. But when her hand was in midair, she immediately retracted it. She suddenly remembered that in ancient times, men and women were not allowed to touch each other. She really had not changed this habit of hers after being with Big Ice for so long. And Xiao Ran's expression was already unnatural because of her question just now. He was afraid that she would notice that something was wrong with him. When he saw that she had misunderstood, he heaved a sigh of relief. He did not notice that she had retracted her hand halfway. He took a deep breath and then slowly said, as if he was telling a secret to someone, "These are the birthday gifts I prepared for Qingyan. To be exact, I've been preparing them for 4 years." Chapter 897. Xiao Ran's words successfully stunned Chu Qingyan. He had prepared this for her for 4 years as a birthday present? While she was still in disbelief, Xiao Ran did not give her any time to react. With one hand covering the wound on his chest, he bent down strenuously and knelt on the ground on one knee. He reached for the buckle with one hand, then used his fingers to open the lid. Chu Qingyan could not help but look over, and the things inside entered her eyes. Because Xiao Ran's body was blocking her view, she could only see part of it. But just part of it was enough to shock her. There were wooden dolls, precious luminous pearls, flower lanterns, paper umbrellas. She recognized some of them, but there were also some that she had never seen before. Xiao Ran picked up a kite. It looked a little clumsy. He smiled embarrassedly. "This is the first time I've made a kite. Isn't it ugly?" For years ago, when he was walking in the suburbs, he saw many children flying kites on the grass. He thought that if Qingyan was here, she would probably like this thing. So, he got someone to buy one back. He followed the instructions, but unfortunately, his skills were not very good. He could barely fly. Chu Qingyan looked at the kite. It was a butterfly, but the bamboo was not done properly, so it looked a little loose. But in her eyes, it was more beautiful than any kite she had ever seen. "No, it's very beautiful. I thought I would be able to fly it with her this spring. I'm afraid I'll have to wait until next year." He smiled and put it down. Then Xiao Ran picked up a wooden doll. His gentle gaze fell on it, as if he was looking at something through it. When Qingyan left the capital, she had no choice. She left in a hurry. I gave her a wooden doll that I made myself. But later, I thought it didn't look good, so I made a new one. When the time comes, I'll change it back to the original one. That puppet was indeed much more exquisite than the first one, but Chu Qingyan still said, "You're very thoughtful." Receiving the praise, Xiao Ran rubbed the back of his head, his expression suddenly becoming shy. "I made these myself, or I found them among the common folk. I know that she doesn't like the restrictions of the palace, and doesn't like those rare treasures. She only likes things with the common folk flavor, so I have been collecting them for her these past few years. But there's so much, it's probably enough to give to her for several lifetimes." Chu Qingyan clicked her tongue. She was simply dazzled by the sight. She was too surprised. Xiao Ran scratched his head, feeling a little embarrassed. "I didn't think too much about it. I bought whatever I saw for her or made it myself." He paused for a moment, then looked up at Chu Qingyan. "Chu Yen, do you think Qingyan will like the gift I prepared for her?" The youth was half kneeling on the ground, holding a multicolored shuttlecock in his hand. He turned to look at her. His face was like jade, his lips were red, and his teeth were white. What a handsome youth. At this time, he asked anxiously, his amber eyes hiding anticipation and nervousness, making people feel pity for him. Chu Qingyan sighed softly. How fortunate was she to be able to have such a friend treat her wholeheartedly. She nodded solemnly. I think that Miss Chu will like all of these things when she sees them. Although he knew that she couldn't represent Qingyan, he didn't know why, but when he heard her words, his hanging heart settled down. Then Chu Qingyan, I have a favor to ask of you. Can you help me deliver this box of gifts to Qingyan? He stood up and asked sincerely. Chu Qingyan felt this was a little strange. Why don't you personally deliver these things? Why do you need someone else's help? As soon as her voice fell, she saw a bitter smile appear on Xiao Ran's face. I have many people protecting me, but they are not loyal to me. My mother does not allow me to be too close to my eldest brother, so the things that I send out will return to me. Chu Qingyan understood. Consort Yu had always forbidden him from interacting with the ice block, so she didn't like her. All right, I'll help you take care of these things. Hearing her straightforward answer, Xiao Ran couldn't help revealing a smile. Chu Qingyan was dazzled by his smile. He didn't hide it, he didn't restrain it. It was a simple smile of gratitude, just like a white lotus blooming in the summer, pure and flawless. Many years later, when she recalled this scene, she couldn't help but sigh. That pure youth. Thank you, Chu Yen. Xiao Ran said gratefully. Chu Qingyan smiled. You're welcome. At this time, there were already people talking outside the tent. Your Highness, it's getting late. You should drink your medicine and rest. Xiao Ran's smile disappeared and he returned to his cold and cheerless appearance. Chu Qingyan knew that she had to leave, so she had Jin Xan and Su Yi come in to help her move the box. Before she left, she seemed to remember something and turned to look at the person standing under the candlelight. Miss Chu from 4 years ago, how much do you remember? These words made Xiao Ran's mind flash. He couldn't help but think of the young girl who had stolen his eldest brother, the young girl who had been poisoned to death by his pastries, the young girl who had angered him half to death, the young girl who couldn't refute him. Her smile and voice flashed in his mind. As long as it's related to her, I remember it. He smiled confidently. Is that so? Chu Qingyan lowered her eyes. If she were to stand in front of you today, would you still be able to recognize her? Xiao Ran smiled confidently. Of course. Chu Qingyan raised her eyes and looked at him deeply, then she cupped her hands and bid him farewell. Xiao Ran felt that her last glance at him was somewhat meaningful, but in the end he remembered that the gift he had carefully prepared would soon be in Qingyan's hands, so he forgot about this little episode. After walking out of the tent, Chu Qingyan turned to look in the direction of the bright lights and shook her head. Even so, you still didn't recognize me. Her low voice hid her sigh. She didn't stay for long and walked back to her tent. When she lifted the curtain, she saw a mountain of medicinal herbs and Cheng Yen Luo who was buried in them. Did I go to the wrong place? Isn't this where I'm staying tonight? She pursed her lips. Cheng Yen Luo raised her head when she heard that. There was an unknown medicinal herb stuck in her hair. Oh, Huoling came over just now and moved your luggage to King of England's tent. He said it was an order from your big ice cube. Chu Qingyan was baffled. Didn't we agree to stay in the same tent? Why did he change his mind at the last minute? She was about to continue writing the list of medicinal herbs when she heard that. She couldn't help but look at Chu Qingyan gloatingly. Speaking of which, did you offend your big ice cube? Otherwise, based on his ruthless personality, he wouldn't have summoned you to his side at this time. After all, with your identity, he has to avoid suspicion. Chu Qingyan rolled her eyes. Why would I offend him for no reason? You're thinking too much. All right, then I won't talk to you anymore. It's getting late, so I won't send you off. Cheng Yen Luo waved her hand at her and continued to bury her head and ignore her. Chu Qingyan was disheartened. She lowered her head and walked towards Big Ice Cube's tent. Chapter 898. When Chu Qingyan brought the wooden box into the tent, there was no one inside. After asking the soldiers, she found out that Big Ice Cube had not returned yet. She stopped questioning and pulled the wooden box to find a place to rest. Then, she opened the box and took out the things inside one by one, looking at them seriously. No one had ever prepared a box of gifts for her with so much care. She was pleasantly surprised and touched. When Xiao Su returned, he saw the person sitting on the ground, hugging a pile of things and sighing. He took off his armor and asked casually, "What are you doing?" When the person who was addicted heard this, she was shocked at first. When she turned her head and saw that it was him, she jumped up from the ground and moved in front of him, showing him the things in her arms. "These are the gifts that Xiao Ran prepared for me. There's a whole box of them. Don't you think he's very thoughtful?" Chu Qingyan was so focused on showing off the treasures that she did not notice that the expression of the person in front of her changed because of her words. Then, it quickly returned to normal. "He's indeed very thoughtful," Xiao Su calmly replied. After getting this answer, she went back to sitting on the ground in satisfaction. She touched here and there as if she could not bear to part with them. "I don't think I've seen you cherish the gifts I gave you so much." Xiao Su looked at her actions and said with a hint of jealousy in his voice. Chu Qingyan did not understand the jealousy in a certain someone's heart and answered with a smile. "Isn't this different? You're the person I care about. We see each other day and night, so it's fine if we hide our feelings in our hearts. Anyway, you know it. Just like how I treat you well and how you treat me well, we both take it for granted. But Xiao Ran is my friend, so this is different. It's rare for a friend to be able to do this. This makes me very touched." When he heard the words, "take it for granted," he felt very comfortable. Thus, he slowly walked to the couch. As Chu Qingyan spoke, she suddenly rolled her eyes and looked at the people behind her with a bright smile. She thought she was virtuous and said, "Big ice block, it seems that Xiao Ran is not married yet. When we return to Jiangnan, how about we help him arrange a marriage? Jiangnan's women are both beautiful and intelligent. He should like them." Xiao Su's footsteps paused as the corners of his mouth curled up in a strange arc. From his sparkling eyes, one could tell that he was in a good mood. However, his tone was still calm. "I'm afraid we can't decide on his marriage." When Chu Qingyan heard this, she slapped her forehead in realization. "I almost forgot. His mother is a powerful character. She definitely won't ask for our help. Otherwise, she might think that we're plotting something. I was so happy that I became muddle-headed." Xiao Su smiled. He sat on the couch and didn't answer. As the older brother, he had already felt Xiao Ran's feelings. For years ago, he thought that this younger brother of his was just a child and didn't take it to heart. He didn't expect that after so many years he still missed the little fellow so much. It could be said that his feelings were deeply rooted. If it wasn't for the impending war and his serious injuries, he would have made things clear to him so that he could focus on proper matters. The little fellow now only treated Xiao Ran as a friend and hadn't discovered his feelings. If she knew, in order to avoid arousing suspicion, she would probably stay far away from Xiao Ran. In reality, the little fellow didn't have many friends. That was why he didn't restrict her interactions with Higashio Motetsu. Even if he discovered that there was something wrong with Higashio Motetsu, he tolerated it to the greatest extent. He hoped that when the time came, Xiao Ran wouldn't be unable to be friends. Perhaps it was the silence behind her that made Chu Qingyan have a long-winded thought. "Big ice cube, do you think this peach blossom is pretty?" She just happened to turn to a book. Opening it, she found a peach blossom inside. She snorted in wonder. "I didn't expect him to be able to make bookmarks. But this peach blossom as a bookmark seems a bit difficult for the peach blossom." Xiao Su's gaze followed her serious question. He saw the flower between the pages of the book. Although the flowers and leaves were wrinkled due to the loss of moisture, it wasn't difficult to see its beauty on the branches. He nodded lightly. Chu Qingyan received a response and continued to flip through the book. But for some reason, she suddenly felt dull and a thought jumped into her mind. She tilted her head and looked at the person sitting on the bed with her chin in her hand. She said seriously and expectantly, "Big ice cube, let me ask you. If I didn't see you for 4 years, would you recognize me?" He knew that her question was about Xiao Ran. "What do you think?" Xiao Su looked at her intently. Chu Qingyan thought hard for a while. "I think you would. Don't ask me why. My intuition tells me that you would recognize me." Xiao Su's lips curled up. "Of course, no matter if it's the you from 4 years ago or the you from 4 years later, I would recognize you. The reason is very simple. I don't use my eyes to see people. I use my heart. He pointed to his heart. I knew it. Chu Qingyan smiled proudly. If it was the big ice cube from 4 years ago or the big ice cube from 4 years later, she would also be able to recognize him at a glance. She believed that there would always be a thread connecting people whose hearts and minds were connected. However, she quickly scrunched up her little face. Then why can't Xiao Ran recognize me? I don't think there's any difference between 4 years ago and now. I can recognize him at a glance. He just has his facial features. Isn't it the same for me? When Xiao Su heard this, he waved at her. She immediately got up from the ground and ran towards him, throwing herself into his arms. She had wanted to do this since this morning. Xiao Su saw a small whirlwind pouncing towards him. He subconsciously opened his arms to catch her. How old are you? You're still so clumsy. I'm only like this to you. She protested. Xiao Su didn't say anything this time. He gently embraced her. Big ice cube, why do you think? Could it be that Xiao Ran has already forgotten what I look like? Chu Qingyan returned to the main topic. Xiao Su stroked her back, his voice calm. Not everyone is like me, so it's not strange. But this question isn't important. As long as he still cares about you, the friendship is still there. He wasn't good at comforting people, especially when the person this little fellow was worried about was not only his younger brother, but also his love rival. Chu Qingyan was suddenly enlightened. She flipped open the peach blossom again. That's right. Why should I be so serious? When the time is right next time, I'll reveal my identity. I hope he won't be shocked at that time. As she spoke, the petals fell to the ground along with the pages of the book. Chu Qingyan hurriedly squatted down to pick them up. However, they were already stained with dust. She accidentally broke them. I'm so clumsy. She was a little annoyed. Xiao Su patted her head lightly. Don't blame yourself. Rest early. You have to wake up early tomorrow. Chu Qingyan subconsciously nodded. After keeping the gift and closing the box, she suddenly remembered something very important. There was only one bed in this tent. Where would she sleep? Chapter 899. In the military camp, there were many things that had to be done. Thus, Xiao Su changed his clothes and casually cleaned himself up. He walked over and saw her standing there with a hesitant expression. Aren't you going to change your clothes and rest? Xiao Su said casually. Chu Qingyan shuddered when she heard this. She twisted her fingers and lowered her head to steal a glance at the bed. Although it was not as big as the one in the residence, it looked big enough. However, big ice cube, there seems to be only one bed here. Okay, you sleep on the bed. I still want to read the file. Xiao Su did not understand the meaning behind her words and walked to the couch. She immediately looked up with a puzzled expression. Aren't you going to sleep on the bed? Was he going to sit on the couch for the whole night? Xiao Su picked up the file and turned to her when he heard her words. There was a faint light in his eyes. Are you inviting me? Chu Qingyan was so frightened that she waved her hands repeatedly. I didn't mean that. Xiao Su shook his head and smiled helplessly. Go to sleep. The bed is big enough. You can turn over however you want. No one will fight with you. His words were an indirect answer to her earlier question. Chu Qingyan heaved a sigh of relief, but for some reason she felt a little unhappy. She was a living person, no, a great beauty standing in front of him. How could he be so undistracted? Did he mean that she was not charming at all? Xiao Su naturally did not know what she was thinking. He sat on the couch and focused on reading. Chu Qingyan first changed her clothes behind the temporary curtain, washed up, and climbed onto the couch. The mattress had a damp smell and the bedboard was very hard. It was very uncomfortable when she lay down. However, it was already very good to have a place to sleep at this time. She was flexible and did not fuss about it. However, she was not very sleepy at this time. She remembered something and sat up, hugging the quilt. Big ice cube, I can sleep with Yen Luo tonight. That way, you can also have a good sleep. You still have to get up early tomorrow to break camp. She thought that sleeping anywhere was not as comfortable as sleeping on the bed. There's no need. You don't have to do that. Go to sleep. Xiao Su was still focused on the file. There was a wolf here eyeing the little fellow covetously, so it was better for him to keep her under his nose. Xiao Ran, who was drinking medicine, expressed his dissatisfaction. He didn't even know that Qingyan was a woman dressed as a man, so he innocently took the blame of the wolf. He felt wronged. Hearing the decisiveness in his words, she did not dwell on this issue any longer. She hugged her calves with both hands, placed her chin on her knees, and stared at him without blinking. Ever since they left Jiangnan, the mask on Big Ice Cube's face had never been taken off. The firelight shone on him, making him look especially handsome in her eyes. She thought happily. She was the only one who could see the Big Ice Cube's face. This kind of exclusivity made her very satisfied. Although the little fellow opposite him didn't speak, her eyes drifted over, making him unable to concentrate on reading. He looked up and caught her gaze. He thought she would avoid it, but unexpectedly she smiled at him generously. "Can't sleep? How can I sleep soundly when you stay up all night and work hard?" Chu Qingyan scratched her hair and looked at him innocently. Xiao Su sighed. Actually, with her here, he couldn't read the dossiers in peace. The tent was only so big, and the faint fragrance from her body surrounded him, making it difficult for him to concentrate. He was looking for trouble for himself. "Then I won't read it tonight. I'm going to sleep." Xiao Su put down the file and rubbed his eyebrows. He had hardly rested for the past 2 days, so he looked a little tired. After he finished speaking, he blew out the candlelight. In an instant, darkness enveloped them, and only the light from the fire outside faintly shone in. Chu Qingyan heard the rustling of clothes and knew that he was half lying on the bed. She hesitated for a moment. "Big Ice Cube, do you want to come over? The bed here is very big. Ian, you're inviting a wolf into the house." She heard his light laughter in the darkness. She muttered, "What do you mean by inviting a wolf into the house? We're already in the same tent, and you're the one who called me over." "Yes, I'm inviting you, the little wolf, into the house." His deep voice was especially seductive in this night. She was almost mesmerized by his voice and forgot to refute him. Just as she was wringing her hands and sulking over her poor self-control, there was another rustling sound. Unlike before, this sound was right next to her ear. Soon the bed sank. Before she could react, she felt someone lift the blanket and lie down beside her. You're not." The sudden proximity of a man's scent made her speak incoherently. "If I don't do as you wish, I'm afraid neither of us will have peace tonight." Xiao Su smiled helplessly, but if one listened carefully, they could feel the deep affection in his smile. Chu Qingyan rubbed her nose and did not speak again. Xiao Su felt that she had also laid down. He reached out to pull the blanket over her and then closed his eyes. But after a while, he felt a soft hand caress his face. He could not help but open his eyes. He was about to take it down and tell her not to mess around. A man and a woman in a bed together, and it was also his beloved. How could he not feel anything? It was just that the situation did not allow it, and with his strong self-control, he was able to suppress the surging in his body. But at this moment, the little fellow's initiative almost made him fall short. But that pair of small hands had already touched the acupuncture points on both sides of his cheeks. Her fingers paused for a moment, and then she rubbed with moderate strength. Xiao Su's raised hand froze in midair, and then he put it down. "I saw that you weren't feeling well, so I rubbed it for you. You should sleep first." Her gentle and considerate voice sounded in his ear. Xiao Su's expression inadvertently softened. He wanted to say something, but her sweet scent filled his nose. Her delicate fingertips pressed against his forehead and gently massaged it, making him gradually relax. Soon he was overcome by drowsiness. Hearing his shallow breathing, Chu Qingyan smiled gently, but her hands did not stop. The night was very cold, and her fingers were almost stiff. After an unknown amount of time, she also became sleepy. She withdrew her hand and shrank into his embrace, planning to sleep. In a daze, it seemed like someone was holding her cold hands, and then she quickly warmed up. Southern Song Army Camp. "Your Highness, our ambush has failed. Lin Yu is dead, and we've lost half of our people." Xiao Su has already taken over Xiao Ran's position and is currently in the Sichuan army camp. The person who appeared on the mountain with the thick-browed man was currently standing in the main tent to report. Lin Yu was killed? Pang Huang narrowed his eyes, feeling a bit of disbelief. Yes, he was killed by a youth by Xiao Su's side with an arrow that pierced his heart. Good. Killing my beloved general and injuring my elites. It seems like there's another debt between this prince and Xiao Su. Pang Huang revealed a smile that was not a smile, but it made people's hairs stand on end. Then Crown Prince, what should we do next? Let's wait and see. This prince has already figured out Xiao Su's tactics from the past few years. Now we just need to wait for him to make a move. This way, this prince will be able to counter it. Pang Huang revealed a sinister smile. Chapter 900. Early in the morning, when Chu Qingyan woke up, the bed beside her was already empty. She rubbed her eyes, and the big ice cube was gone again. Remembering that today was the day to break camp, she immediately got up to wash up. Just as she tied her hair up, Jin Xian came in. She turned her head and saw the fiery red battle suit in his hands. She couldn't help but be puzzled. His Highness isn't here. Jin Xian gave a rare smile. This is the battle suit that His Highness asked someone to make. It's for you. Chu Qingyan jumped over in surprise. She reached out and flipped through the battle suit in his hands. Red cloak, red armor, only the boots were black. She fell in love with this set of battle suit at first glance. She quickly took it and waved her hand to let him leave. She couldn't wait to put it on. After fastening the last belt and stepping on the soft boots, Chu Qingyan heard the sound of the curtain being lifted. She thought that Jin Xian had come in, so she said without turning her head, "Wait a moment, I'll put on the helmet." There was no sound behind her, so Chu Qingyan didn't care. After she finished dressing up, she turned around with a smile. If only there was a mirror, she would know whether she looked good or not. Then when she saw the person behind her leaning against the table and looking at her, she was stunned. Then she smiled even more happily. "Why did you come back?" When Xiao Su's gaze met her smiling face, he couldn't help but slowly straighten his back. The person in front of him was bright and dazzling. Her eyes were like spring water. She was wearing a battle suit with a crimson jade belt around her slender waist. He couldn't see her feminine posture. Her jet black hair was tied up and covered by a fitting helmet, covering her bright and clean forehead. Her eyebrows were like autumn water, and the corners of her eyes were raised. She looked cunning and quick-witted. At a glance, her entire person was neat and tidy, adding a trace of heroic spirit compared to usual. Handsome eyebrows and slender eyes, she looked spirited. Her appearance was so good that it made one forget about vulgarity. He had seen her dress up so many times, but he was stunned by her every time. She waited for a long time, but he didn't reply. She could only feel his gaze fixated on her body. For a moment, she lost her confidence and awkwardly tugged at her clothes. "Do I look bad?" Xiao Ran came back to his senses. Seeing her depressed expression, he sighed in his heart. The little fellow's words would make many people ashamed. He walked closer to her and tidied her clothes. He said helplessly, "I'm starting to regret getting someone to make you a battle suit." "Huh." She was puzzled. "Forget it. Since you've already worn it, then so be it. Remember, don't attract any more peach blossoms home." It was too late to change into a battle suit now. Besides, the little fellow's appearance was already like this. No matter how he changed, he could not hide it. He could only remind her. Chu Qingyan was confused by his words. She couldn't help but smile. "Yes, General." But in the end, she pointed at the peach blossoms behind her and hugged her big ice cube's arm. She wanted to cry, but no tears came out. "I was clearly far away, how could I still attract them back? Big ice cube, I didn't do it on purpose." Preparing to dismantle the camp, Xiao Su and Chu Qingyan walked out. At this time, an unfamiliar young deputy general walked over. "Master, the people have been gathered." Xiao Su nodded. "If you need any weapons, then go to the storeroom to get them." That young deputy general immediately turned and left. Behind him were 4 or 5 capable soldiers. Just these people were more valiant and heroic than the soldiers she saw on the military field. Chu Qingyan was a bit curious. This deputy general didn't seem to appear in the camp the day before yesterday. He was one of my previous subordinates. He was transferred here yesterday. Xiao Su's eyes flashed with a trace of sorrow, but it quickly disappeared. At this time, someone else came to ask for orders, so he focused on dealing with the others. Chu Qingyan knew that he was busy, so she moved to the side to stand with Hualing. That person is called Fong Lu. He followed Master when you were leading the army. Master gave him a group of 10,000 elites to lead. Hualing's voice sounded in her ears. Although she didn't know why he would suddenly mention this, she knew that the great spirits didn't like to waste words. She thought about it and asked, "Then why didn't I see him 2 days ago?" For a soldier with such a large army, he should have appeared many times. As soon as her voice fell, she saw a rare trace of ridicule appear on Hualing's face. She only heard him say in a cold voice, "5 years ago, Master returned after a victory. His Majesty used the excuse that he wasn't at the border as an excuse to put these 10,000 elite soldiers under the command of a general under the Fu family named Fu Yan. 4 years ago, Master handed over his military power and left for Lian City. The following month, His Majesty secretly gave an order for Lu Lu and Fong to scatter these 10,000 elite soldiers into various camps in Sichuan." Chu Qingyan was stunned hearing this. The Sichuan emperor wanted to break apart the big ice cube's power? Following this, a mouthful of anger surged from her heart to her throat. She felt her entire body tremble. This was anger. Hualing saw that her face was ice cold and his eyes were also filled with fire. "Little princess, did you know? Those 10,000 elite soldiers were Master's last line of defense for the border. If other countries invaded, with Fong Lu's men, they would be able to hold on for at least a month. At that time, when the reinforcements arrive, they would be able to protect the border. It's a pity that Master's good intentions were destroyed like this. If it wasn't like this, how could Nansong only spend 3 days to break through the border and invade our country?" She tightly clenched her fists and her expression was a bit ugly. As a general, he could have tens of thousands or even hundreds of thousands of soldiers under his command. Not just anyone could train a group of elite soldiers. Moreover, in the eyes of the Big Ice Cube, the requirements for elite soldiers were very strict. They had to know how to change their identity at any time. They had to be able to switch between cavalry, archers, vanguards, artillery, and ambushers. It was already very impressive for a normal person to train 100 elite soldiers, not to mention 10,000. Sichuan Emperor had eyes but failed to recognize a pearl. He only thought of how to reduce his son's power without caring about the consequences. Now, he was suffering the consequences of his own actions. However, he still needed his son who had dealt with all kinds of blows in the past to clean up the mess. Chu Qingyan didn't know whether to be angry or laugh. In the end, she could only sigh silently. The Big Ice Cube had 8 lifetimes of bad luck to have this kind of imperial father. Then who was Fong Lu? Chu Qingyan lowered her voice to ask. Hualing smiled in relief. Although Fu Yan has been making things difficult for Fong Lu and demoted him to the status of a city guard, fortunately he didn't leave the border. Yesterday, Master ordered this subordinate to find him and let him try his best to contact the scattered elite soldiers of the 3 armies. Speaking to her, Hualing's smile carried a touch of bitterness. Now, only a few hundred people have been found. There is no news of the others. For years have passed and those people have been pushed aside. I don't know where they have been arranged. Hopeless waiting and endless bullying. I don't know if those fierce men of the past can withstand these 4 years of loneliness. Although she didn't have the experience of Hualing and the others in the past few years to fight the war with these elite soldiers, she could feel the anger and sadness in Hualing's words. Chapter 901. Seeing Chu Qingyan remain silent, it was like her entire body had been lit on fire, making a ci sound. Hualing saw that this was bad. Would the little princess consort's anger be completely ignited? He did not want to be scolded by his master. So he immediately explained. Little princess consort, this subordinate is telling you this not to make you feel depressed, but to have you accompany master more. He has a lot of bitterness in his heart. Chu Qingyan's heart ached. That's right, even as bystanders, they couldn't take it, not to mention Big Ice Cube. When she went to Lian City in the past, she did not hear Big Ice Cube mention that Fong Lu and the others had been transferred away. Hearing Hua Ling say this, she carefully thought about it and found some clues in her memories. It seemed like during that time, Big Ice Cube became very silent and would often look in the direction of the border in a lonely manner. So at that time, Big Ice Cube was feeling sad, but she did not understand. Don't worry, I will do my best to protect him. She suppressed the bitterness in her eyes and revealed a bright smile to Hua Ling. Hua Ling saw this smile that was more dazzling than the sun and felt relieved. The little princess consort was the person who would warm his master's life. As long as the little princess consort was here, his master would definitely be far away from those sad and painful matters. Then he would do his best to protect the little princess consort. At this time, Turan walked over with his horse. He looked very handsome in his battle clothes. When he saw Chu Qingyan, he was first shocked before saying with a smile, "Master's eyes aren't bad. This battle clothes suit you very well." Chu Qingyan revealed a proud smile and replied, "You're also not bad." While they were talking, the camp had already been dismantled and everyone was ready to set out. Have the vice-generals in charge of each camp count the people. We'll set out in 15 minutes. Xiao Su coldly ordered the 2 rows of vice-generals in front of him. Yes, sir. After a loud roar, the crowd quickly dispersed. Chu Qingyan also received her own battle horse. When she was about to lead it into Hua Ling's group, she saw a group of people walk over. The person in the lead was Xiao Ran. He walked in front of Xiao Su. His complexion was much better than the first day, but it was still very pale. He said apologetically, "Imperial brother, I have to return to the capital first. I can't stay by your side and help the people." Xiao Su patted him on the shoulder. "Be careful on the road." Xiao Ran nodded. Then, from the corner of his eye, he saw a smear of red. He turned sideways and saw that it was Chu Yen. He didn't expect that there would be someone who would look so good in a battle suit. He was stunned for a moment before he walked over. "Chu Yen, I have to go. You have to pay attention to your safety." Although they have only met a few times, Xiao Ran has a good impression of her, and said with concern. Chu Qingyan nodded. "Your Highness, Fourth Prince, you also have to be careful on the road." At this time, it was unknown who said that they were going, but Chu Qingyan jumped onto the horse's back. There was already a large group of soldiers passing by. Chu Qingyan held the reins with both hands, ready to follow, but she stopped again and turned to look at the people not far away. "Xiao Ran, you also take care." She waved at him, and then, as if she had unloaded a burden, she urged the horse to quickly catch up with the people in front. Xiao Ran couldn't help but smile slightly, and said goodbye in his heart. When the army all left, Xiao Ran heard an attendant whisper, "The youth beside the King of England is really unruly." He actually dared to call His Highness by his full name. Xiao Ran was slightly stunned. He didn't seem to pay attention to the way she addressed him. He only remembered the smile she raised before she left, like a dazzling sun. He shook his head and was about to leave when he suddenly stopped. "Xiao Ran, you also take care." His eyes widened and his lips trembled, but he couldn't say a word as he looked in the direction the army left. A look of disbelief appeared on his thin face. "Qingyan, you said that all meetings in the world are reunions after a long separation. I look forward to the day we meet again. You have to take care." For years ago, he had fiercely hugged her and said those words to her. For years later, she left him again and gave him the last words of that year. "Xiao Ran, you also take care." The same scene, the same words. He seemed to have seen the deep concern in her eyes when she turned around. No wonder when he saw her, he had an inexplicable feeling of wanting to get close to her. No wonder when he heard her speak, he felt an inexplicable joy in his heart. "It turns out that we have met again after a long separation, but I didn't recognize you." At this time, his subordinates had brought over the carriage and horses. Xiao Ran's eyes lit up and he immediately went forward to grab the reins, preparing to chase after the people in front of him. Even if he only knew her identity now, he still had to tell her, otherwise he wouldn't be satisfied. Fourth prince, what do you want to do? The direction we're going is not that way. The guards immediately surrounded him. Some pulled on the reins and some blocked the way, making it impossible for Xiao Ran to go forward. All of you move out of the way, this king wants to get on the horse. Xiao Ran's eyes were red with anger, looking like a trapped beast. Your Highness, you are still injured. We have received orders from the Empress to safely escort you back to the capital. Please don't make it difficult for your subordinates. You should get on the carriage and return to the capital. Yan Shi went forward and pleaded in a sincere voice. Xiao Ran looked around and saw that all the guards were standing there with determined expressions. Even if he gave the order, they would not back down. He was the fourth prince that everyone respected in court, but he had no freedom to speak of. The eldest brother was right. They could not be willful, and they could not be willful. He raised his hand and covered his eyes, hiding the pain in his eyes in the darkness. Fourth prince, what's wrong? Did your injury relapse? Yan Shi saw that his lips were pale and immediately asked in a panic. It's nothing, my heart just hurts a little. Xiao Ran put down his hand. When he saw the light again, his eyes were confused. When it became clear, he could only see that the tail of the army had disappeared from his sight. Yan Shi was shocked. He thought that he had some serious illness and wanted to call for a doctor, but he heard a lonely order. Yan Shi, let's go. Your Highness? Yan Shi looked at the youth in front of him in astonishment. Although he was only 16 or 17 years old, his face showed a pale expression. Xiao Ran waved his hand and did not need anyone to help him. He turned and walked towards the carriage, leaving Yan Shi with a lonely back. Yan Shi was stunned for a moment, but he quickly gave the order to set off, in case something happened to the fourth prince. Xiao Ran sat in the carriage and took out something from his sleeve. He looked at it with absent-minded eyes. Qingyan, forgive me for not recognizing you. Forgive me for not being able to find you. He touched his chest. The place where he was stabbed by the sword was burning with pain. He laughed bitterly. You've seen me in my most embarrassing state. It's really too embarrassing. He pressed the thing to his chest and whispered, Qing, little girl, I will wait for you in the capital. You must protect yourself. Chapter 902. Chu Qingyan followed behind Xiao Su at the leisurely pace. At this moment, she turned around to look at the thousands of elite soldiers behind her. They were wearing different armor from the other soldiers. So these were the soldiers that Big Ice Cube had spent so much effort in nurturing. As expected, their spirit and pace were different from the others. Big Ice Cube, where are we going first? Chu Qingyan asked. The closest place to here is Jiangning County. Let's go and take it back first. Xiao Su's gaze crossed the mountaintop and looked into the distance. His gaze was somewhat heavy. Chu Qingyan nodded. Jiangning County had already been lost a month ago. If they could take it back in one battle, it would definitely boost the soldiers' morale. At this moment, a few white shadows leapt out from the haystack. Fong Lu, who had been paying close attention to the surrounding movements, immediately shouted, Your Highness, be careful. Then, he raised his spear and stabbed towards one of the white shadows. Unexpectedly, the white shadow was very agile. With a twist of its waist, it bypassed his spear and ran in the other direction. In front of them was the direction of Her Highness. Fong Lu was greatly alarmed. Just as he was about to raise his spear and chase after it, a hand stopped him. He turned around and saw that it was Turin. Turin's expression was leisurely as he said, Don't worry. That's young Master Chu's pet. It's not dangerous to master. Only then did Fong Lu stop. He turned around and looked at the white shadows again. He saw 4 blood-red animals that looked like wolves and dogs surrounding Chu Qingyan, happily barking. What are those? It was the first time Fong Lu had seen animals with such pure fur. He was surprised and curious. Snow wolves. All 4 of them. When Turin mentioned them, his voice rose with a hint of pride. Fong Lu was even more surprised. Snow foxes were arrogant and cruel animals. They were basically irreconcilable with humans. He didn't expect them to become a human's pet. He originally thought that Chu Yan was just a subordinate that Master had nurtured by Chu Qingyan's side. His talent was shallow, so he didn't pay too much attention to him. How could he have known that he had for such ferocious beasts? Not just these four, there are more. Turin pointed at the sky. Fong Lu looked in his direction and saw a tall and mighty eagle circling in the air. Its gaze was extremely sharp as it stared at their marching team. Behind it, there were a few other eagles that were just as strong as the eagle. Even the valiant general whose hands were stained with blood couldn't help but break out in cold sweat when he saw this eagle. What kind of person is this young Master Chu Qingyan? Fong Lu finally asked about Chu Qingyan's identity. Turin pondered for a moment and then said mysteriously, "She's someone that Master values very much." Fong Lu scratched his head. What kind of answer was that? At this time, Chu Qingyan was helplessly taking care of little Annoyance and the others. In the past month, Bai Yutang and the others had grown very quickly. She didn't know if it was because she had brought them out to walk, but now, they had grown taller. They were in between adolescence and adulthood. As they approached, the horses couldn't help but tremble. Fortunately, she pulled them back, otherwise she would have fallen off. "Didn't I tell you to properly follow the team? Why did you pop out?" Because these few were rather strange, she didn't dare to let them appear in the army. She didn't think that they would suddenly pop out. Just now, she saw Fong Lu make a move and knew that they couldn't hurt them, but she couldn't help feeling worried. Glutinous Rice Ball and the others immediately began to roll on the ground and act spoiled, as if they were complaining that they were abandoned by their master. They were the kings of the snow, how could they not be seen? Hua Ling was amused by these charmingly naive actions and quickly received the angry glares of Bai Yutang and the others. Just as Chu Qingyan was vexed, Xiao Su, who had been watching from the side, slowly opened his mouth. "Since they want to follow, then let them follow. You just have to restrain them from hurting people." Receiving the big ice cube's permission, Chu Qingyan didn't even have time to be happy before she saw Bai Yutang and the others run in front of the big ice cube's horse and hoot. Translation: We aren't lowly animals, we won't casually hurt people. Translation: That's right, that's right. Translation: Seeing that you've pleaded for us, we'll reluctantly forgive you. Thus, after the few howls became happy, they immediately returned to their master's feet and acted cute. Seeing this scene, the corner of Fong Lu's mouth twitched. This was the first time he saw animals with such intelligence, as if they were conversing with people. What was strange was that Her Highness actually allowed them to hoot, as if she was already used to it. It was simply too mysterious. Chu Qingyan face-bombed. Not only did these few grow in size, their tempers also grew. With the company of these few, she didn't feel bored or tired during the day and night journey. As the vanguard, Xiao Su led 3,000 soldiers to a place 10 li away from Jiangning County, while the remaining 30,000 stayed behind to hasten on the journey. 2 days ago, Gao Hao, Jing Guangwei, and the other deputy generals led their soldiers to the places where the Southern Tsang army had invaded. Their mission was to contain the Southern Tsang army's advance and wait for Xiao Su to finish dealing with those cities before returning to deal with the Southern Tsang army. It was already the beginning of summer, and the mountain wind was hot and dry. Wearing the heavy and stuffy armor, Chu Qingyan wiped the sweat from her forehead and followed the big ice cube to the top of the mountain, overlooking the county at the foot of the mountain. From afar, they could see the Southern Tsang flag on the city gates. Chu Qingyan subconsciously looked at the person beside her, feeling the coldness emanating from his body. No matter how magnanimous a person was, they would still be angry when their own country was occupied. Chu Qingyan tried her best to smile. "Big ice cube, it's fine. We'll soon take it back and drive those invaders out." "I'm not as weak as you think." Xiao Su turned to look at her, a faint smile appearing in his eyes. "Gather everyone and prepare for a meeting." She was dazzled by his sparkling eyes and immediately responded, "Okay." "Your Highness, Xiao Su has already brought people to the outskirts of Jiangning County." Ray Luo stood in front of Pang Huang and reported. "How many people did he bring?" Pang Huang held a pastry in his hand, but he wasn't in a hurry to eat it. His gaze fell on the pastry as if he was studying the patterns on it. He has 3,000 people at his side. 1,000 of them are former elite soldiers. Apart from the people heading to Anlong Harbor to tie us down, the remaining 30,000 are following behind. Ray Luo was holding a secret letter in his hand. When he heard his master's question, he immediately replied. Pang Huang nodded indifferently. Previously, the army was split up to attack one by one in order to make Sichuan flustered. He could take care of the west, but he couldn't take care of the east. This is very useful for Xiao Ran, a novice. Now that Xiao Su is in charge of the three armies, although we can't make him panic, it can be considered a great use to pin him down and prevent him from concentrating his forces. Master's chess moves were truly wonderful. Ray Luo gave a thumbs up in praise. Flattery is useless to this crown prince. Pang Huang threw the pastry in his hand onto the plate, then leaned back on the couch and glanced at him. Have you found the person behind the scenes who leaked the information to us? Chapter 903. After His Highness the Crown Prince's reminder, Ray Luo looked ashamed. He bowed and apologized. Please forgive me, Crown Prince. Our people still haven't been able to find out their identities. Every time they appear, they're very secretive. Even the carrier pigeons that were sent didn't follow them for more than 1 li before disappearing. This subordinate is incompetent. Only then did Pang Huang furrow his brows and reveal a deep expression. Ever since they planned to enter Sichuan half a year ago, someone had approached him and said they were willing to cooperate with him and help him obtain half of Sichuan's empire. The condition was that after the matter was completed, they would make him a promise. A cooperation in exchange for a light promise. It was a cheap deal. It seemed that this cooperation was very tempting. Although he held a skeptical attitude at first, the other party soon gave him a big gift. The defensive map of Sichuan's border and the timetable for changing the guards. Back then, he had used this to break through the border's most important line of defense in just a few days. However, such a smooth process made Pang Huang calculate in his heart. This person was hiding behind the scenes. If he was a Sichuan person, then this method was too bold. If he wasn't a purge, then it was terrifying that he could grasp so many secrets. Although he had obtained benefits from this cooperation, he still didn't know who the person behind the scenes was. Therefore, in order to not be controlled when the time came, he sent people to investigate in private. However, half a year had passed, and this person was still as mysterious as before. Your Highness the Crown Prince, are you worried that this person will harm us when the time comes? Ray Luo didn't see him speak, so he tried to ask. Pang Huang's face revealed a trace of coldness. In less than a year, we will be able to take over Sichuan. When the time comes, he won't be a threat to us at all. However, this crown prince doesn't like the feeling of the other party being in the dark while we're in the light. The person in control of the overall situation should be this crown prince. His Highness the Crown Prince had always been arrogant and conceited. The actions of the person behind the scenes had somewhat angered him. Ray Luo thought for a moment and continued, this subordinate feels that you don't have to worry at all. In the past 6 months, we've captured so many cities along the way and haven't seen any problems. It can be seen that when the time comes, we'll flatten Sichuan. Even if he wants to turn the tables, he won't have the ability to do so. Our Southern Blue has millions of mighty soldiers. Pang Huang nodded as the corners of his mouth curled up into a sly smile. You're right, we need to make the best use of everything. This crown prince still needs him to spy on Xiao Su. Your Highness is wise, Ray Luo complimented. Alright, let's not talk about such useless things. Have Lu Xiang guard Jiangning County well. Xiao Su's vanguard has already arrived and will probably make a move in the next 2 days. Don't let anyone take advantage of the situation, Pang Huang instructed. Rai Ro immediately asked, then do we need to send someone to support General Lu? He has 20,000 troops, more than enough to deal with Xiao Su. Tell him not to act rashly and follow this prince's orders. Pang Huang did not care at all. But the other party was Xiao Su. These words were stuck in Ray Luo's throat, but in the end he swallowed them under His Highness the Crown Prince's confident gaze. His Highness the Crown Prince was a rare genius in the Southern Blue Continent. Marching and fighting were not a problem for him. Ray Luo didn't think too much about it and turned to leave. But Pang Huang stopped him. Does your highness have any other orders? Ray Luo was puzzled. Xiao Su has a red-clothed young general by his side? Pang Huang tapped his fingers on the table and looked at him with a smile that was not a smile. Ray Luo was stunned at first, but then he remembered who he was asking about. When he mentioned this person, Ray Luo's voice carried a trace of resentment. Yes, that person is the one who killed Lin Yu with a single arrow. He's young, but he can't be underestimated. When Lin Yu and Chu Qingyan had clashed, he had hidden in the shadows to observe. He was surprised that she was able to beat Lin Yu to the point where he couldn't retaliate. In the end, he died to her arrow. He had previously reported this to His Highness the Crown Prince, but he found that His Highness didn't seem too surprised. It was as if he was familiar with the youth. Now that he mentioned it, he was even more certain that His Highness the Crown Prince was interested in the youth. Very good. If you encounter him, leave him alive. Pang Huang waved his hand and dismissed him. Ray Luo didn't ask any more questions and left. With his fingers still on the table, Pang Huang looked into the distance. His memories returned to half a year ago when he met the youth at the foot of the Fuli mountain range. No, it was more accurate to say that it was a young girl. She was like a hibiscus rising from the water, delicate and charming. She wasn't like the women of southern blue who had thick eyebrows and large eyes. However, he had made a mistake. The beauty was like a rose with thorns and spiciness. She was like a nimble little beast. He had almost fallen into her hands several times. In the past half a year, he would think of her from time to time. That woman called Chu Qingyan. He really wanted to pull out her thorns one by one. If he could keep this kind of woman by his side, then his life would be a bit more interesting. Pang Huang put his hand behind his head. His lips curled slightly. He was in a very good mood. On a mountaintop 10 li away from Jiangning County. A topographic map of Jiangning County was spread out on a rock. This was drawn by one of Hualing's subordinates who was extremely good at drawing maps. He had arrived at Jiangning County 2 days ago and drawn it. Xiao Su pointed at the 4 city gates of Jiangning County and said, "Tomorrow night, the third watch will be when the enemy changes guards. Bring people and carefully sneak in through the 4 gates. Then, find a place to hide your tracks. Once the sun rises, the army will attack the city. Coordinate with them from the inside and outside and catch them off guard." This subordinate understands. Turin and the others immediately replied. Although Jiangning County was vast, its terrain was low. It was surrounded by mountains and forests on all sides, so it couldn't compare to a bustling area. It was considered a town near Sichuan and was often visited by wild beasts. However, it had the advantage of covering a large area. A single county was comparable to 2 other towns. If they could sneak in, they would be able to hide their tracks very well. Therefore, Xiao Su planned to take back this place first and use it as a place to store food and a place for backup troops. Fang Lu, Turin, Hualing, each of you will lead a team and enter from the east, west, and west walls. As for the remaining northern gate aisle, before Xiao Su could finish speaking, he heard a bright voice ring out. "The northern gate will be led by me. You are the main commander and should be in charge of the rear to prevent any sudden changes." Everyone heard this and looked at the person sitting quietly on the side. It was Chu Qingyan, who was wearing a bright red dress and still had a faint smile on her face. Xiao Su frowned. He was about to refute her request when Fang Lu suddenly spoke up. "Your Highness, this subordinate feels that little brother Chu is right. You still want to mobilize the army to attack the city, so you have to stay here." Hualing and Turin looked at each other. Although they agreed, this little brother Chu was not a normal person. He was their master's treasure. Xiao Su coldly looked at the person beside him, but she responded with a confident smile. He frowned, but in the end he did as she wished. After deciding on the number of people, the 4 of them went to organize. Chapter 904. Iron. Chu Qingyan was the last to go down, but when she heard someone calling her from behind, she couldn't help but turn around. Xiao Su stood behind her, his gaze filled with reluctance and hesitation. "You, It was really rare to see such a large ice cube. She tilted her head and gave him a mischievous smile. You can't be sentimental on the battlefield, my general, your highness. Xiao Su face-bombed. Don't mess around. Hearing this, she stopped smiling and put on a serious expression. I'm wearing the Sichuan's military uniform, so I'm a soldier. There's no reason for me to hide in the back while others charge into battle. Big ice cube, just let me go. As the saying goes, there are no weak soldiers under a strong general. I was trained by you, so you have to believe in yourself and believe in me even more. These words left Xiao Su speechless. His little fellow had always been sharp-tongued, and her words today were even more impeccable. He somewhat regretted being soft-hearted and letting her get involved in this chaotic battle. All right, time is of the essence. I have to go see how I'm going to use the people you arranged for me. As she said this, she secretly squeezed his hand and quickly withdrew it. She looked left and right, afraid of being discovered, and then slipped away. Xiao Su watched her youthful figure jump under the sunlight, and his furrowed brows slowly relaxed. The next afternoon, the army had already met up with the vanguard. Using the terrain of Jiangning County, they were able to hide their tracks very well. 2 hours later, Chu Qingyan and the others were about to set off with their own people. Jean Xian found her. Master, why didn't you bring this subordinate with you for tonight's operation? When arranging the people, his name wasn't on the list. He thought that it was because he was Master's guard and wasn't included in the list. He didn't expect that Master would only bring the people on the list and not allow anyone else to act on their own, so he was startled awake. Chu Qingyan looked at him, her gaze clear. Jean Xian, I didn't bring you because I have a very important task for you. Please speak, Master. Jean Xian was surprised. I'll leave the howling mounts to you. You will secretly be responsible for His Highness' safety. Chu Qingyan slowly said. But His Highness has shadow guards by His Highness' side. Jean Xian didn't understand and his expression showed resistance. Turin has always been responsible for His Highness' shadow guards, but Turin isn't here tonight and Hualing is leading the troops. At this time, I'm not assured, so I hope that you can bring some people with you to protect him. Speaking to this point, Chu Qingyan looking at him, please, Jean Xian. Jean Xian clenched his fists, feeling very conflicted. In his eyes, nothing was more important than the safety of his master. He had also promised Xi Ning that he would never leave his master's side. But now that he heard his master's sincere words, he knew that in his master's heart, nothing could compare to His Highness. This made him feel very conflicted. Master, please take care of yourself. In the end, he could only helplessly bow his head and agree. Chu Qingyan's lips curved into a smile. I know, you too. Then she grasped the long sword at her waist and turned to look at the person standing under the tree. Her beauty was unique, a touch of light between heaven and earth. Her expression was solemn. Ever since the big ice cube gave the order yesterday, her heart hadn't been calm. There was an indescribable premonition circling around. But she knew that there wasn't a big problem with this plan. Maybe it was her first time coming into contact with a battle, and she was overthinking. But just in case, she left the howling mounts behind. Under the tree. Master, you're looking for this subordinate? Turin hurriedly walked over. Send my shadow guards to protect Ian. Xiao Su calmly ordered, as if he was just talking about moving a rock. Turin's expression changed. Master, you can't do that. The shadow guards have never left your side. If you're worried about the little princess's safety, this subordinate can send Lu Guang and the others to do this. Shadow guards are good at hiding their tracks. If Lu Guang and the others follow, with her intelligence, it won't be hard to find them. But Master, you also need shadow guards by your side. And this time, the little princess has elite guards by her side. There won't be a big problem. Turin continued to persuade. This prince has made up his mind. You don't need to say more. Xiao Su waved his hand, indicating that this topic was over. Turin still wanted to say something, but seeing his master's indifferent gaze, he could only sigh and accept the order. At this time, Chu Qingyan had already changed into a black robe. Her black hair and black robe contrasted with her fair skin. She and Turin stood in front of Xiao Su, waiting for orders. Now, you can go to Jiangning County City. Wait for the third night watch period, then you can enter the city and find a good place to hide. The army will attack the city tomorrow morning. You can move according to the signal. Xiao Su swept a glance over the leaders, his expression cold and dignified. This subordinate understands. Everyone said in unison. Good, let's go. Yes. The three of them left first. Chu Qingyan fell behind. She straightened her clothes and prepared to follow the others. When they brushed past each other, Xiao Su reached out to grab her hand. She stopped and turned her head to look. From this angle, she could only see his smooth and beautiful chin. She heard his deep voice, "Be careful." Her brows twitched. She wanted to say something, but when the words reached her throat, only one word came out, "Okay." Her arm loosened and she walked forward without any hesitation. When you choose to follow, you have to abandon all dependence. When necessary, you have to become a pair of strong wings to protect and pave the way. At this time, her heart was filled with self-gratification, because she could finally become his right arm and fight side by side with him. She's going to do a great job. Looking up, she watched the setting sun gradually approach the horizon. Her lips pursed into a line. In the blink of an eye, she had become a heroic young leader. Let's go! The black-clad elite soldiers behind her followed silently and followed her to the foot of the mountain. At the top of the mountain, Qingyan Luo looked at Chu Qingyan's departing figure and then looked at Xiao Su, who was standing still. Her expression was unusually cold. She couldn't help but say to the people beside her, "These two are really a match made in heaven." One left Xiao Qi behind for the other's safety, while the other transferred her own shadow guards away. Isn't the result the same after all this trouble? After knowing that the shadow guards had left, Jin Xian was no longer as worried as before. When he heard Qingyan Luo's teasing, he couldn't help but raise his brows. "Miss Cheng, you know that it's different." At this moment, Qingyan Luo saw Xiao Su retracting his gaze and turning to walk inside. She couldn't help but look down the mountain again. Indeed, the little girl's figure had disappeared. She retracted her smile. "I hope this operation will be successful." Jin Xian said firmly, "It will." 15 minutes later, Pang Huang received a secret letter. After he opened it, his lips curled into a strange smile. "It's as this crown prince guessed. He really wants to cooperate with us. It's a pity that this crown prince won't give him the chance." He placed the letter close to the candle flame. Soon, it burned out and the light of the flame reflected his unfathomable smile. Chapter 905. After entering the forest, Chu Qingyan split up with Huo Ling and the others, heading in different directions. She listened to the surroundings as she led the others through the forest. She heard that there were many fierce beasts around, so she wanted to reach Jiangning City before the sky turned dark. When she was carefully moving forward, someone suddenly shouted out, "There are wild beasts." Chu Qingyan looked over when she heard this. She grabbed the sword at her waist and was about to make a move, but she saw several familiar large white figures jump out of the dense forest. Her lips twitched. "Xiao Fan, why are you here?" Everyone could see that it was little brother Chu's pets that came, so they couldn't help putting away their weapons. These elite soldiers had never interacted with Chu Qingyan before. They had only heard that she had a few ferocious pets by her side. Now that they had seen her in person, it seemed like the rumors could not be trusted. These pets were very obedient in front of little brother Chu. Look, they were rolling around and acting cute. There's no use acting cute. I'm doing business and not playing. You should all go back, otherwise I won't bring you to play next time. Chu Qingyan had no room for discussion. Snowflake Cake and the others looked at each other. While they were hesitating on how to convince their master, someone suddenly came out. "Old Tiger?" The soldier beside Chu Qingyan called out in shock and instantly pulled out his blade. What she was afraid of had come. Chu Qingyan turned around and saw the tiger that was half a person tall and knit her brows. The tiger was not afraid as it angrily roared at Chu Qingyan's group, as if the other side had invaded its territory. She could not delay any longer. Chu Qingyan wanted to end this quickly, Otherwise it would be bad if more tigers were attracted. However, at this time, Bai Yutong and the others jumped out and surrounded the tiger. Their front claws scratched the ground as they revealed their eerie fangs. The tiger faced off against Glutinous Rice Ball and the others. Very quickly, it was defeated and ran away with its tail between its legs. Chu Qingyan was stunned. This really was a rare sight, so she put down her weapon. The soldiers behind Chu Qingyan couldn't help but swallow a mouthful of saliva. They were wrong just now. These beasts were indeed ferocious, but now that they had chased away the tiger, why were they rolling around in front of little brother Chu and acting coquettishly? Translation: Master, I know how to fight tigers. I'm very powerful. Chu Qingyan didn't know whether to laugh or cry when she saw them staring at her. In the end, she compromised and said, "All right, let's go." There were many birds and beasts in this area. If Glutinous Rice Ball and the others cleared the way, they could avoid some trouble. Thus, the combination of man and wolf traveled quickly. Finally, before the sun set, they arrived at a small hill not far from the main city. From afar, they could see the southern blue soldiers standing guard on the city walls. Chu Qingyan retracted her gaze and said to everyone, "Everyone hide first. Don't act on your own. After midnight, wait for the first batch of guards to change." Because there would be an extremely exhausting battle starting tonight, she let everyone rest and fill their stomachs first. Glutinous Rice Ball and the others crawled by her feet, wagging their tails from time to time. Chu Qingyan couldn't help but shake her head and laugh. "Why do I feel more and more like a pet dog?" "Awoo," the beasts protested softly. Translation: I'm much more noble than a dog. I can howl, but they can't. Chu Qingyan smiled even more happily. Then she felt that something was wrong. "Where's little annoyance?" "Awoo." Translation: It didn't follow. Chu Qingyan nodded. Then she asked, "Then, have you seen Little Hai?" After she received her orders yesterday, Little Hai disappeared. She didn't know where it ran off to. It was really worrisome. "Awoo." Translation: I don't know. Chu Qingyan sighed. "Forget it. It's the only one who can bully others. No one dares to bully it." "Awoo." The beasts cried even louder. Chu Qingyan smiled and stroked their fur. Soon night fell. She didn't know if it was because of her mood, but she felt that the air was much hotter. Even the night breeze carried a hint of summer heat. The third watch sounded. Everyone got ready and stood upright. "We only have a quarter of an hour, so everyone must move quickly and cooperate with each other. If we're discovered, then His Highness' plan will be ruined. Do you understand?" "Understood." "Good, let's move." Chu Qingyan waved her hand. Everyone immediately covered themselves with black cloth and quietly moved towards the city wall. Chu Qingyan's face was also covered with a black cloth. She vigilantly used her qinggong to move forward. The night wind was very strong. Thin clouds floated in the sky, slowly covering the bright moon. The world suddenly became much darker. At this time, Chu Qingyan and the others had already arrived at the city tower. "Now let's go." As soon as her voice fell, everyone threw out hooks and hooked onto the city wall. Then, holding the rope with one hand, they quickly climbed up the city wall. This was designed by the wood spirits. It was more stable than the usual climbing tools and wouldn't leave any traces. Chu Qingyan used the rope to climb up the city tower. She was thinking about how to avoid the guards above, but when she saw the scene above, she couldn't help but frown. Why wasn't there a single person on the city tower? At this time, her people had already climbed up the city wall. They put away their hooks and pulled out their weapons. They were vigilant of their surroundings, waiting for Chu Qingyan's next order. While Chu Qingyan was puzzled, she suddenly heard someone giving a lecture at the bottom of the city tower. "You have to keep your eyes open. Sichuan's army might attack us one day. If there's any mistake, I'll make you suffer. All right, go up and defend the city." After Chu Qingyan heard these words, she couldn't help letting out a sigh of relief. She had everyone immediately go down before the enemy came up. After safely entering the city and successfully avoiding the Sichuan's guards, Chu Qingyan had people find a small alley to hide in. But before entering the alley, Chu Qingyan was a little uneasy as she looked back at the city wall. At this time, there were new guards up there. Tonight had gone so smoothly that it made her feel a little uneasy. She didn't know if she was thinking too much, but her body flashed, and she hid in the alley. Feng Jia, release a signal to tell His Highness that we've successfully entered the city. She suppressed her emotions and turned to say to the people beside her, "Yes." A spark flickered in the air for a moment before disappearing into thin air. "General, little brother Chu has successfully entered the city." Xiao Su also saw the signal. But after he calculated the time, he frowned slightly. It seemed to be faster than expected. At this time, the person beside him said in surprise, "General, the East, West, and South have also sent out signals. Our people have already infiltrated." Xiao Su's expression didn't relax because of this. He stared in the direction of the main city, his eyes deeper. There seemed to be something wrong, but he couldn't figure out the reason. This was the first time he had this feeling since he started fighting. Was it because he hadn't led troops for 4 years that he had this feeling? Xiao Su frowned and stood there silently. At this time, there were only 2 people left in the hall. Lu Xiang couldn't hide the doubt on his face. "Your Highness the Crown Prince spent so much effort to have us act out this play. Isn't this a bit unnecessary?" "Don't doubt His Highness the Crown Prince's intentions." Rei Luo looked at Lu Xiang disapprovingly. "Xiao Su is cunning, and his subordinates aren't easy to deal with. If you underestimate them, you won't be far from defeat." Yes, Lord Lei is right. Then when will our people move?" Lu Xiang immediately slapped himself in the face and asked politely. "For the time being, it's daybreak, but if there are any changes to the plan, I'll let you know." After speaking, Rei Luo waved his hand. "You can leave now. If you succeed, I'll put in a few good words for you in front of His Highness the Crown Prince. Then, this general will thank Lord Lei in advance." Lu Xiang was overjoyed. After speaking, he immediately dismissed his men. Rei Luo stroked his beard and nodded slightly. Everything was waiting for daybreak. There was only a few more minutes until daybreak. On the mountaintop, Xiao Su had his back to Jiangning County. He looked at the black mass of the army in front of him and said in a deep voice, "I'll leave this battle to you. Let's go." As soon as his voice fell, the army of 30,000 marched toward Jiangning County. The cavalry was in front, followed by the archers, and the infantry brought up the rear. Looking down from the top of the mountain, it looked like a group of densely packed ants surrounding Jiangning County. "I heard that there are only 20,000 soldiers in the city. We have 30,000, so it shouldn't be a problem." Qingyan Luo looked from afar and muttered subconsciously. When Ethereal heard this, he said in a casual but comforting tone, "If nothing unexpected happens, it won't be a problem to take them down." "It's as if you didn't say anything." Qingyan Luo glared at him and turned to leave. Ethereal rubbed his nose, somewhat embarrassed. When the people in the city saw the signal light up, they stepped forward one after another. Although they hadn't slept all night, everyone's eyes were shining. They were like ferocious beasts ready to pounce, waiting for Chu Qingyan to give the order. After Chu Qingyan finished counting the number of people, she immediately ordered, "Good. Since the sky isn't completely bright yet, let's go to the north gate and take care of the soldiers guarding the city. Then open the gate and let our men in." Everyone nodded. "Good, let's go." Chu Qingyan turned around and led everyone out of the alley, preparing to head for the north gate. However, when Chu Qingyan stepped out of the alley, she sensed something amiss in the air. She suddenly jumped up and took 2 steps back. When she steadied herself, she had a long arrow in her mouth. There was a row of arrows stuck in the place where she had been standing. She stared coldly in front of her. On top of the mountain, Xiao Su was looking in the direction of Jiangning County, his robes fluttering despite the lack of wind. Suddenly his expression changed. "Oh no, we've fallen into a trap." The deputy general of the 1st Battalion didn't hear what he said clearly and immediately stepped forward to ask, "General, is there something wrong?" Xiao Su's expression was as cold as ice. "The other party already knows about our plan. They're now beating us at our own game. Then what do we do? Do you need this general to call them back? The deputy general of the 1st Battalion looked flustered. It's too late. Turin and the others have begun to move. The army has already begun to attack the city. Xiao Su pursed his lips into a thin line. The other party had planned to kill the little fellow and the others in the city, then deal with the army outside. They hadn't expected them to be so prepared. What exactly had gone wrong? Then what should we do? The deputy general of the 1st Battalion was at a loss. He turned back to look at the city. The army had all arrived and could no longer stop. If they retreated, they would be disregarding the elites that had been sent from the city. Prepare the horses. Xiao Su strode past the deputy general of the 1st Battalion and prepared to descend the mountain. General, you can't go. It's too dangerous ahead. You can't. The deputy general of the 1st Battalion reacted. The general was going to personally head to the battlefield, so he hurriedly stopped him. This prince won't watch as the soldiers throw their lives away for nothing. Xiao Su's voice was so deep that it could drip water. The deputy general of the 1st Battalion was intimidated by Xiao Su's imposing manner of anyone who stands in my way will die. At this time, Jean Xen quickly ran over. Your Highness, are you saying that Master is in danger? Xiao Su's pupils contracted when he saw Jean Xen. Weren't you by Ian's side? Why you here? Master had this subordinate stay behind to protect you. Jean Xen hurriedly explained. Xiao Su's heart trembled. His gaze fell on Jiangning County, and countless emotions flashed across his eyes as he looked at Su. In the end, he took the horse that the soldiers had brought over and made a prompt decision. Let's go to Jiangning County first. As soon as he finished speaking, a group of Southern Song soldiers suddenly appeared on the mountain top. Want to leave? It's too late. Xiao Su, you can't even protect yourself right now. Chapter 907. Chu Qingyan spat out the arrow in her mouth and looked at the arrow formation in front of her. At first, she was surprised, but soon she calmed down. Be sensible and surrender. Otherwise, you will become the target of the arrows. The leading soldier sneered and threatened. Chu Qingyan twitched the corner of her mouth. So much nonsense. The soldier didn't expect that Chu Qingyan would still be so arrogant in such a situation. After being blocked by her, he immediately became angry. Release the arrows. At the same time, Chu Qingyan said to the people behind her, Don't fight, go to the center of the city. As soon as she finished speaking, she pulled out her long sword and flew into the air, passing through the arrow formation. Then, she turned around and slashed her sword. The first row of archers was knocked down by Chu Qingyan. Taking advantage of this delay, her people had already torn a hole in the arrow formation. No one asked her why she didn't go to the nearest city gate, but walked into the trap inside. Dozens of people followed her without hesitation to the center of the city. There was no time to explain to everyone, because since the other side already knew their strategy, they must have set up an inescapable net at the city gate early. At that time, they would really walk into the trap. She was in such a situation, and Turin and the others must be in the same situation. It was impossible to break out of the city, but if they could find Turin and the others, there might be a glimmer of hope. No one would have thought that the situation would turn around so quickly overnight. Chu Qingyan turned around and saw that everyone followed her. She was relieved, but soon she was worried again. Because there were so many soldiers in front of her. Even if they could fight against 10 soldiers, they would be dragged to death. Little brother Chu, what should we do now? Fang Jia finished off the enemies in front of him and turned to ask. The only thing we can do now is to fight. Chu Qingyan gritted her teeth and pulled out her sword from the enemy in front of her. Her eyes were bloodshot. Everyone, try to stay together. Don't spread out. But the people answered one after another. Seeing more and more enemies approaching, Chu Qingyan wiped her wet eyes and said, I'm sorry. This is the first time you've come out with me, and you're going to die with me. She rarely apologized to someone so solemnly, especially in the midst of a bloody battlefield. Hearing this, Fang Jia and the others laughed heartily. Their white teeth were even brighter than the morning sun. "Little brother Chu, don't say that. Ever since we became soldiers, we've been putting our lives on the line. It's just a matter of time." One of them waved his hand indifferently at her. They could see that this young boy was humble and capable, reliable and reliable. They had long had a good impression of her and admired her. His black clothes were already stained with blood. He couldn't tell if it was his or someone else's blood. Chu Qingyan felt stifled in her heart, but she couldn't say anything. She could only try her best to smile at them. If she was still alive, she would definitely protect them. At this time, they were like fish on a chopping board, being attacked from all sides. But no one showed a trace of dejection or despair. She knew that these were the elite soldiers that Big Ice Cube had nurtured. They would fight to the end. At this time, familiar voices sounded out one after another. Young master, she could vaguely hear Turin and Hualing's voices. Very quickly, a path was formed in front of her. She saw Turin and the others quickly running towards her. "You're also here. Are you all right?" Chu Qingyan immediately looked over them. Seeing that they were unharmed, her brows relaxed. When the earth spirit saw that her complexion was still good, it opened its mouth to explain. "Just now when we sensed that something was wrong, we were surrounded by the arrow formation. We broke out of the encirclement and came to find you. On the way, we met the fire spirit and Fong Lu. Because most of the troops were attracted by you, the people we brought along did not encounter much resistance." Chu Qingyan nodded as she quickly said, "The enemy has already prepared for this. We cannot just charge in like this. The army in front is already attacking. Let's gather everyone and find a direction to break out of the encirclement. Let's see if we can open a city gate and help the army. If we can't, we can also deplete their manpower." In a short time, she had already figured out the situation and found the most direct and effective way. Turin, Fong Lu, and the others looked at each other. They didn't have time to admire her and supported her suggestion with actions. Everyone's eyes were dyed with a bloodthirsty light. They were prepared to sacrifice their lives here. Once on the battlefield, life and death were not in your control. On the mountaintop, Xiao Su looked at the enemy army that was less than 100 steps away from him and laughed at himself. He was really worried and confused. He only noticed these people when they were close. "Xiao Su, do you plan to surrender or do we beat you until you kneel and beg for mercy?" A tall and mighty Southern Blue general walked out and looked at Xiao Su with contempt. The words from before had also come from his mouth. At this time, Xiao Su had already recovered his usual calmness. He retracted his gaze from the bottom of the mountain and looked at the Southern Blue general. "Your tone is not small." The Southern Blue general laughed loudly. "Xiao Su, are you a dead duck that refuses to admit your mistake? Your elite troops have already entered the city and fallen into our trap. I reckon that they've already been destroyed in our hands. They don't even know how they died. What an injustice." As if he hadn't said enough, the general proudly continued, "You won't be able to make it in time with your men. No, you can make it in time to collect their corpses. However, this general won't give you that opportunity. If you beg for mercy, perhaps this general will be merciful and pile your corpses together. It's just that the wild beasts in the mountains will take advantage of it." He raised his head and laughed arrogantly. However, he didn't know that a long sword was flying towards him. Fortunately, the young general behind him pulled him away and dodged it. The Southern Blue general looked at the long sword stuck in the ground with lingering fear. When he turned his head, he saw that Xiao Su had just finished his attack and that the deputy standing beside him only had a scabbard at his waist. The Southern Blue general's face was filled with ferocity. "Xiao Su, accept your death." The Southern Blue soldiers immediately surrounded him from all directions. The majority of the soldiers had already been sent to attack the city. Only a small number of men and horses remained by Xiao Su's side. When the enemy troops approached, Jin Xian and Su Yi instantly surrounded Xiao Su to protect him. The deputy of the 1st Battalion also led everyone to pull out their swords to resist. Xiao Su swept his eyes over the incoming enemy troops and then turned his head to look at Jiangning County not far away. His eyes sank as if he was deep in thought. Immediately after, no one saw how he moved. The dozen or so Southern Blue soldiers that appeared in front of him all fell to the ground. They were all killed in a single strike. Xiao Su's first move was so efficient that it intimidated the enemy and raised their morale. The Southern Blue general coldly snorted and raised his voice. His Highness the Crown Prince has ordered that whoever can obtain Xiao Su's head will be rewarded with a promotion and 10,000 taels of gold. As soon as these words came out, the Southern Blue soldiers rushed towards Xiao Su's group with murderous intent. Chapter 908. Xiao Su held his long sword in his hand as he dashed through the crowd like a dragon. Wherever he went, no one was left behind. The people that Jean Xian brought were all experts that could take on 10 people at once. However, the other side had too many people. No matter how elite they were still outnumbered. The Southern Blue general saw that Xiao Su's people were overwhelmed and couldn't dodge in time, so he laughed arrogantly. He had heard of Xiao Su's name before. Xiao Su had won many battles with fewer people, but he believed that this time, Xiao Su wouldn't be able to escape from their palms. This was because the Crown Prince had ordered them to bring 5,000 soldiers to deal with him. 5,000 against less than 300 people. It was as easy as crushing an ant. In an exquisite pavilion, Pang Huang had a leisurely look on his face. "How's the battle situation?" The soldier who had just walked in bowed and said, "The people in the city have already been surrounded. It's only a matter of time before we take them down. The army outside the city is currently attacking, but it shouldn't be a problem for our people to hold on for an afternoon. Bai Li brought people to surround and kill Xiao Su, but there's no news yet." Pang Huang nodded as he played with the peach pit in his hand. His expression was unrestrained, like a noble family's young master playing outside. The words that came out of his mouth were cruel and bloody. This battle isn't mainly inside or outside the city. This Crown Prince only wants Xiao Su's life. Even if we lose the city, it doesn't matter. Once Xiao Su dies in battle, that will be the most fatal blow to Sichuan's army and the Sichuan Empire. Your Highness is wise. Xiao Su is Sichuan Emperor's final trump card. As long as he dies, our army will be unstoppable. It won't be long before we can directly invade the capital and take Sichuan Emperor's head. The soldier followed along, getting more and more excited as he thought about it. Don't be too careless. Although we've transferred so many people to deal with Xiao Su, this Crown Prince has a premonition that it won't go so smoothly. Hurry up and supervise your subordinates. Don't waste time. The longer this drags on, the more disadvantageous it is for us. Pang Huang clenched the peach pit in his hand as his expression became dark and gloomy. Xiao Su, if you can escape this calamity, then things will become interesting. Thousands of miles away, a man wearing a monk's robe walked on the bustling street with a young monk following behind him. The shops on both sides of the street were bustling with noise and clamor. Shouts rose and fell, filling the ears of the passers-by. However, the eminent monk, who was standing like a lotus, walked slowly. His entire person was calm and composed, as if the surrounding sounds could not affect him. Within 3 steps of him, every step was silent. It was as if he was strolling in a pond of flowers. A cool breeze blew gently, making one's soul feel refreshed. Did something happen? The little novice monk behind the senior monk rubbed his little bald head and asked in a childish tone. "Oh." The young novice monk blindly followed him. The senior monk stood at the fork and suddenly turned to look in the direction of the border. A hint of worry flashed through his eyes. That benefactress was in trouble. He lowered his head to calculate with his fingers, but the result made him frown. He could not calculate anything. His gaze once again turned to the north. Could it be that there were some changes? "Master, what's wrong?" "Nothing. Let's return to the temple." The big one and the small one walked forward slowly. A gust of wind blew, blowing up the green robe and making it dance in the air. It looked like a lotus flower had bloomed. Inside Jiangning County City, the 4 small teams gathered and immediately strengthened the team. Everyone's morale was high. Chu Qingyan and the others fought bravely without any mercy. Being gentle to the enemy was being cruel to themselves. Plus, they were all experts. Soon, they tore a small hole in the encirclement. Let's go! Chu Qingyan led the group to the north gate and killed their way through. Lu Xiang, the general standing on the city gate tower, saw that his men had suffered heavy losses. He said resentfully, "So useless. You can't even take down a few people with so many people. These people are Xiao Su's elites. It's normal for ordinary soldiers to not be able to resist them." Real Yuo's tone was disapproving. However, his gaze fell on one of the leaders. He narrowed his eyes and felt that this person was somewhat familiar. Who cares if they're elites or not? They can't escape once they fall into our hands. Men, set up a double arrow formation. I want to shoot them into hedgehogs in front of the city gate. Lu Xiang felt that he had lost face in front of Rei Luo. If Rei Luo wasn't there, His Highness the Crown Prince would put in a few good words for him. He would suffer a great loss. Lu Xiang flew into a rage out of humiliation. He ordered the people beside him to immediately prepare. He glared fiercely at Chu Qingyan and the others who were getting closer. Everyone who stood in the way of his bright future must be eradicated regardless of the cost. Once the order was given, the soldiers guarding the two sides of the city gate immediately trotted over. The two rows separated. The front row had already drawn their bows and were waiting for the enemy to enter their range. After Turin broke out of the encirclement, he looked up at the city gate tower and saw that it was already heavily guarded. He lowered his head and saw that the arrow formation was scattered. The sharp tips of the arrows were pointed at them. "Young master, look." Turin's voice sounded. Chu Qingyan dealt with the two soldiers beside her. She turned her head to look in the direction he was pointing and her face sank. She never thought that the other side would be waiting for them here. There were over 10,000 Southern Song soldiers in the city and they only had less than 300 people. If they met force with force, it would be like hitting a rock with an egg. However, other than hitting a rock, they had no other way out. Just as she thought this, the first wave of arrows was already in front of her. She immediately raised her sword to block. Puchi, the people beside her had already been hit by arrows. Chu Qingyan heard a groan and immediately turned her head to look. She saw Hualing biting a sword in his mouth and using his free hand to pull out the arrow in his arm. She immediately turned around to help him block the torrential rain of arrows. Suddenly, Turin cried out in alarm, "Young master, be careful." Chu Qingyan sensed the fluctuation in the air and quickly dodged. An arrow brushed past her cheek and although it didn't hurt her, the cloth covering her face fell. Rei Luo, who was standing on the city gate tower, saw her true appearance and was shocked at first. He immediately said to Lu Xiang beside him, "Have your people be careful not to hurt that youth." "Sir Rei Luo, do you know that person?" Lu Xiang was a little confused. "You've been asked so many questions. If anything happens to her, you can forget about your future." Rei Luo didn't want to say too much. Lu Xiang didn't dare ask any more and immediately passed down the order. However, the soldiers below couldn't do anything because Chu Qingyan was right next to those people. They couldn't do anything at all. Therefore, this delay gave Chu Qingyan and the others some time to catch their breath. Chu Qingyan and Hualing had their backs against each other as they panted. "Hualing, how are your injuries?" "Young master doesn't need to worry. It's just a small injury." Hualing smiled at her, showing that he was fine. Chu Qingyan nodded, but her brows didn't loosen. The situation was becoming more and more unfavorable for them. Suddenly, a familiar call came from the sky. Chu Qingyan couldn't help looking up. Chapter 909. At this moment, Xiao Su and the others were already surrounded with difficulty. Their people fell, but more of the other side fell. However, 2 fists are no match for 4 hands. Although their morale was high, as long as the other side came in batches, they would soon be worn down in less than 2 hours. Although ants are small, they win in an endless stream. Even the lightest droplet of water condensed into a ball, it was enough to set off monstrous waves and overturn a giant ship. Dozens of swords and sabers stabbed towards Xiao Su in different directions. A normal person could block the weapons in front of them, but they couldn't deal with enemies on all sides at the same time. At that moment, although Xiao didn't panic, his face was frozen. At this time, Jin Xen was trapped in an encirclement. His clothes had already been cut several times, and he couldn't even take care of himself. When he saw this situation, he wanted to rush out, but was stopped again. Thinking of his master's instructions before he left, he held his breath and couldn't help but cry out, "Your Highness!" At this moment, in the fierce battle cries, there was suddenly the faint sound of wild beasts running through the leaves, but no one noticed. Someone felt as if something had jumped by their feet, but when they looked down, it was gone. But their curiosity killed them. Immediately after, 4 or 5 white and black shadows jumped up and bit the hands of the people who were attacking Xiao. Before the crowd could see clearly, they heard a mournful cry that was louder than the previous one. Xiao's feet touched the ground, and he was about to fly away to avoid the killing moves coming from all directions, but the enemies in front of him had already put down their weapons and were dealing with the wild beasts biting them in fright. "Go away! Ah, heavens, help! Where did these wolves come from?" Xiao was also stunned as he looked at the wolves biting the enemy, and he couldn't help but put down the sword in his hand. Awoo! At this time, a snow wolf ran to the side of his trousers and rubbed against him. He lowered his head, surprise flashing in his eyes. "Little trouble?" "Awoo, awoo!" Little Trouble immediately narrowed its eyes as if it was laughing. These were only the wolves in the vanguard, and then there was a deafening wolf howl in the forest, quickly approaching. Wolf pack! Even the experienced and knowledgeable deputy general of the 1st Battalion almost fell to the ground. "Did you bring this?" Xiao looked down at Little Annoyance, who was squatting beside him. Translation: Master was very worried about you, so I stayed and gathered the wolves nearby. The Sichuan soldiers had never seen Little Troublemaker before. At this time, they saw that it was not as ferocious and cruel as it had been when it was fighting the enemy. Instead, it appeared to be docile when facing their highness. They could not believe their eyes. A single wolf was enough to make several people suffer. This was the first time that they had seen so many wolves. The people on the battlefield were somewhat afraid of them. The Sichuan soldiers were originally worried that these wolves wouldn't be able to differentiate between friend and foe. They didn't think that they would only attack the Southern Song army and would take good care of their own people. Although everyone was shocked by these ferocious animals, they were able to relax for the time being. Their previously defeated confidence was once again ignited. "That's great, Your Highness. We have a helper." Compared to the others, Jin Xen and the Howling Cavalry knew Little Annoyance very well. At this time, they did not have the time to be surprised at how it could gather so many wolves. First, they had to solve the predicament in front of them. The corner of Xiao's mouth rose. He patted Little Annoyance's head and said in a gentle voice mixed with a bloody order, "Please." Little Annoyance received the order and howled towards the sky. The wolves followed suit and howled. The sound echoed through the mountains, causing people's hair to stand on end and their legs to tremble. Against humans, there was no problem. Against wolves, the Southern Song army each held their weapons and wanted to retreat. Being killed by the Sichuan soldiers was a matter of 1 or 2 slashes. But against a wolf pack, they would be gnawed and torn to shreds. It was simply cruel to the extreme. "What are you waiting for?" Seeing this inconceivable scene, the Southern Song army general also wanted to retreat. However, he clearly knew that if he could not take down Xiao this time, only death would await him if he returned. Thus, he kicked the soldier beside him and excitedly gave the order. Because his clamor was too unpleasant, before he finished speaking, 2 wolves pounced on him. One bit his leg and the other bit his hand, causing him to lose focus. At this time, a spear was kicked away by Xiao and pierced straight into the Southern Song army general's chest. This general was too conceited. Before this, he thought that he was foolproof. He stood in front of everyone carelessly and became a real target. Xiao did not look at the general. Instead, he ordered, "Jin Xen, end this quickly. Bring everyone and gather at the city walls." Jean Xian immediately responded. With their general killed, the southern Song army was in chaos. The situation was instantly one-sided. As the wolf pack swarmed forward, they fled in all directions. Like a pile of loose sand, they were no longer a force to be reckoned with. Very quickly, Xiao and the rest rode their horses down the city walls. On both sides of them were valiant and vigorous wolf packs. No one shouted. Like an ice-cold arrow, they rapidly flew forward, preparing to pierce through the dark clouds that covered Jiangning County. Within Jiangning County, Chu Qingyan and the rest were attracted by the dark mass above them. What is that? Hua Ling held his injured arm and raised his head to look. Are those eagles? At this time, the dark mass flew down. Someone exclaimed in disbelief. Chu Qingyan squinted her eyes. When she saw the eagle that flew down, she could not help but widen her eyes. Little high? Before she could verify it, the leading eagle led the group of eagles behind it and flew at a low altitude. They spread their huge wings and passed through the crowd. The southern Song army that did not have time to dodge were blown to the ground by their wings. The wind was so strong that some people were unable to get up. The group of eagles flew up again and circled in the air. Chu Qingyan opened her eyes that had been blown shut by the wind. Her clothes were still fluttering in the wind. The soldiers that surrounded her had already fallen to the ground and were crying out in pain. She heard a few familiar cries in the air. She immediately raised her head to look. However, she only had time to see a few snow-white eagles jumping down from the back of the eagles, as well as a large group of black and white shadows. Those shadows somersaulted in the air and landed on the shoulders of the southern Song army. They clawed at them with their sharp claws. Miserable cries rose one after another. In an instant, a large number of the enemy troops had fallen. Chu Qingyan and Turan looked at the scene in front of them in disbelief. They felt as if they were dreaming. However, the three leading eagles quickly swarmed forward. Awoo, 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 white jade candy, snowflake cake, glutinous rice ball. Chu Qingyan looked at the eagles that were circling around her and cried out involuntarily. Awoo, translation, mistress, we're so cool, aren't we? Chu Qingyan could not help but smile. She reached out and patted their heads one by one. However, a certain eagle in the sky was unhappy. It flew down and slapped a southern Song army soldier aside. It occupied the position next to its mistress and moved its head closer. Chapter 9-10. The ferocious birds and beasts were actually acting cute in front of humans. Other than Hua Ling and the others who knew about it, everyone else seemed to have seen a wonder in the world. They were both frightened and curious. Chu Qingyan didn't care that there were others beside her and asked in surprise, "Glutinous rice ball, didn't I tell you to wait outside the city? Why did you come with Xiao and the others?" Awoo, Xiao. Amidst the howls of the wolves and the cries of the eagles, Chu Qingyan vaguely understood the ins and outs of the matter. Xiao wasn't here because it had gone to dispatch its eagle soldiers early on. On the way here, it met the wolves that met up with Glutinous Rice Ball and the others. The wolves couldn't enter the city gate and wandered outside, so the wolf army and eagle army reached their first cooperation. The wolf army borrowed the eagle army to enter the city, and the eagle army assisted in the air. Animals had a stronger sense of crisis than humans. As soon as Xiao and the others knew that their master was going to the battlefield, no matter what, as pets, how could they not lend a hand? So they secretly gathered their forces. Others couldn't understand what they were howling about. When they saw Chu Qingyan's expression change little by little, they couldn't guess. Then this time, I'll have to trouble you. After understanding their words, Chu Qingyan pursed her lips and showed her first happy expression since entering the city. The four immediately stood upright. The wolves guarded around them and stared at the enemy outside covetously. The eagles hovered above their heads and stared at the enemy below with their sharp eyes. Master Lei, what is this about? Why are there so many wolves and eagles? Lu Xiang rubbed his eyes, thinking that he was seeing things. But no matter how many times he rubbed his eyes, the wolves and eagles below didn't disappear for a long time. His voice couldn't help but tremble, and he suddenly lost his mind. Rero was also so surprised that he couldn't say a word. If the other party was reinforcements, then they still had a chance of winning. But what the hell were these wolves and eagles? They were ferocious beasts, cunning and flexible, and made people tremble at a glance. That was the fear of beasts that humans had since ancient times. People's hearts were vicious and could be guarded against, but beasts couldn't be reasoned with because of the language barrier. General Lu, we have so many people. Are we afraid of a mere pack of wolves? Raylo was obviously lacking in confidence, but in order to not affect the army, he braced himself and said, even if there are wolves and eagles in front of us, we have brave warriors and sharp swords. What is there to be afraid of? Lord Lay is right. This general will give the order to attack. Kill them all. Lu Xiang swallowed his saliva and glared at the beasts below the city with a ferocious glint in his eyes. However, he was quickly frightened by their green eyes and averted his gaze. Rayluo reached out and patted Feng Lu's shoulder. He smiled and said, "Our sons are wolves of the grasslands. I believe that you will be able to defend the city for His Highness the Crown Prince. When the time comes, His Highness the Crown Prince will definitely reward you." At this time, the appropriate temptation could drive a person to move forward courageously without fear of death. Lu Xiang's gaze settled and he clenched his fists. Lord Lei, rest assured. This general will not disappoint His Highness the Crown Prince. Ray Luo nodded with satisfaction. When he saw Feng Lu step forward to gather the soldiers and give the order, the expression on his face suddenly disappeared. He took a few steps back and glanced at the people below the city. His gaze finally fell on Chu Qingyan, who was interacting with the hawks and wolves. His eyes flashed with surprise and finally became cold. He had to report the matter here to His Highness the Crown Prince as soon as possible. Moreover, this place was not suitable to stay for long. It seemed that this city could only be abandoned. Ray Luo made a prompt decision. He turned around and led his people. Under their cover, they disappeared from the city tower. Come, surround these people and shoot. Cavalry, we will definitely behead them under the hooves of the horses. Bring the vanguard. This general wants them to taste the power of our sons. One order after another was passed down from the city tower. It was very ear-piercing in the silence of the confrontation between the two armies. Hearing Lu Xiang's words, Xiao Hai and Bai Yutang began to become restless. Chu Qingyan curled her lips and smiled fearlessly. Bai Yutang, take some wolves to deal with the arrow formation. Snowflake Cake, you take the wolves to deal with the cavalry. Glutinous Rice Ball, you also let the vanguard have a taste of your power. Xiao Hai, you let the hawk soldiers act according to the situation in the air. Ao, whoosh, as soon as the voice fell, the wolves and hawks rushed out impatiently. It took time to draw the bow and load the arrows, but the wolves were much faster than them. As soon as the first wave of arrows was released, they were pounced on by the wolves before they could take another arrow. The cavalry came from all directions. It was fine if they were dealing with people, but their enemies were agile wolves that only reached the knees of the horses. Not to mention that their swords couldn't cut them, even the most vigorous horses would be frightened by the wolves. The soldiers on the horses only cared about comforting the horses and couldn't do anything to the enemy. As soon as the wolves jumped up, the soldiers would be pushed to the ground. There was no need to mention the infantry. When their swords came down, the wolves would quickly dodge and couldn't stab them at all. The soldiers could dodge the wolves in front, but they couldn't dodge the wolves behind them. Wolves fought in groups, so compared to the Southern Song army, they were more tacit and cunning. The soldiers were injured one after another. Xiao Hai led the hawk soldiers and flew down from time to time to help the wolves. Tu Ling, Hua Ling, and the others were dumbstruck as they watched the eagles and wolves beat the Southern Blue Army until they fled in all directions. If I didn't see it with my own eyes, I would find it hard to believe what happened. Turin, am I dreaming? Hua Ling wanted to pinch Turin's hand to make sure it wasn't a dream. The earth spirit slapped him on the head. Yes, you're daydreaming. Hua Ling grimaced in pain. Young master, what should we do now? Turin ignored Hua Ling's eyes and asked Chu Qingyan who was in front. Chu Qingyan was currently listening to the sounds in the air. When she heard Turin's question, she turned around and said, "Although we have the help of the wolves and hawks, the Southern Song army has a lot of people. If this continues, Xiao Hai and the others will be tired and we will be in a disadvantageous situation. Just now, I seem to have heard the sound of the army attacking the city, so we should follow the original plan and open the city gates. When the time comes, the city will fall." Turin and the others replied in unison, "Yes." Thus, Chu Qingyan didn't delay any longer. With Bai Yutang and the other wolves opening the path, they tore a path through the encirclement of the Southern Song army and everyone rushed towards the city gates. The wolves and hawks that were fighting with the army also followed behind Chu Qingyan. Once the enemy prepared to attack, the wolves and hawks would mercilessly counterattack. How can this be? Lu Xiang looked at Chu Qingyan and the others who were getting closer and closer to the city gate tower and said in shock, "General, don't be afraid. These wolves and hawks aren't made of iron. As long as we delay them, we can kill them in one fell swoop when they're exhausted." The aide on the side suggested, Good. Pass down the order, no matter what, we have to delay them. Tell them that if they die, this general will report to the crown prince and give them a grand funeral and treat their families well." Lu Xiang revealed a cruel and bloodthirsty expression. Chapter 9-11. With Lu Xiang's order, the Southern Song army did not dare to retreat even if they were afraid of the wolf pack and eagle soldiers. They braced themselves and charged forward. This move was indeed very effective. There were 15,000 soldiers in the city, so no matter how fierce the wolf pack was, they would not be able to withstand wave after wave of attrition warfare. Chu Qingyan sensed the other party's intentions and raised her eyebrows. "Turin, we need to hurry." Turin led his men and charged towards the city gates. However, there were already a large number of soldiers in front of the city gates, so Chu Qingyan and the others could only stop in their tracks. "Young master, I'm afraid that it will be very difficult for us to break through." Huoling's expression was a little anxious. Chu Qingyan immediately looked around. At this moment, she felt a gaze land on her. She suddenly raised her head and instantly met Lu Xiang's malicious gaze. The other party was giving her a sinister smile. She remembered that he was the one who gave the order just now. It seemed like he was the general guarding Jiangning County. She raised her eyebrows slightly, and the sunlight fell into her eyes, instantly blurring her expression. No one knew what she was thinking at this moment. Soon, she lowered her head, and the sunlight seemed to remain in her eyes, bringing with it a scorching heat. She curled her lips and a smile appeared at the corner of her mouth, but it disappeared in an instant. "Turin, Huoling, bring some people to attract the enemy's attention. Fong Lu, bring 3 or 4 people and come with me." "Yes." Turin and Huoling immediately covered them and bravely killed the enemy. Chu Qingyan hooked her finger at glutinous rice ball and it immediately brought a dozen wolves over. After meeting up, Chu Qingyan brought them in another direction. At the same time, Xiao Su had already brought everyone to Jiangning County. "Your Highness, why have you come?" When the general heard the report, he personally came out to welcome him. Xiao Su went straight to the point. "The enemy used 5,000 soldiers to set up an ambush on the mountain. Now, there are 15,000 soldiers in the city. What do you think of attacking?" The leading general immediately scrunched up his chrysanthemum face. "This general is incompetent. Although we have twice the number of the enemy, Jiangning County is impregnable. Our men have yet to climb up the city walls." As they spoke, Xiao Su had already gotten a clear picture of the situation. The walls of Jiangning County were even taller than the average city. It was impossible to reach them with ordinary ladders. If they used ropes, they would be shot to death before they could even reach them. It was clear that this was a city that was easy to defend but difficult to attack. "Prepare the pillars, we'll smash them directly," Xiao Su said in a deep voice. "Yes." The general immediately gave the order. Soon, someone brought the pillar over. Xiao Su stared fixedly at the city gate tower and suddenly said, "Wait. Does your Highness have any other orders? You've been attacking for so long. Have you heard anything from inside?" Xiao Su frowned slightly. We've been attacking all 4 city gates at the set time, but we haven't seen Sir Fu Yen and the others for a long time. We thought that something must have happened inside, so this general gathered most of our forces at the main gate, which is the East Gate. After 2 hours, we haven't discovered any changes in the city gate tower, nor have we heard anything from inside. However, I'm ashamed that we haven't been able to intimidate the people inside, nor have we been able to enter the city. The leading general replied truthfully. If attacking a city could be finished in a few hours, then there wouldn't be so many battles to fight in the world. Your Highness is right. This general was too impatient. The leading general apologized. In reality, Xiao Su was more anxious than the leading general. His Wang Fei and confidants were inside, but he was the soul of the army right now. He couldn't panic. However, his expression became even more solemn. Logically speaking, if the little fellow and the others had fallen into an ambush, with their skills, they shouldn't have been captured so easily. His eyes brightened, and he immediately turned to Jin Xan and ordered, "You take Howling Chi to investigate the 3 city gates in the north, south, and south. Immediately report back to me if there's a bigger commotion." Jin Xian accepted the order. He waved his hand and led Su Yi and the others to spread out. They were all experts in Qinggong. Their martial arts were above the 3 armies, and they were best at tracking. With them, they would be able to know the situation very quickly. As expected, after the time it took to brew a cup of tea, Jin Xen brought people back to report. There's no commotion at the southwest gate. The north gate is heavily guarded. The roars of wild beasts came from inside, as well as the sounds of fighting. When Jin Xian said this, he was slightly excited. Being able to cause some commotion inside meant that Mistress and the others were still alive. Xiao Su's expression was solemn. "Give up on the east gate. Everyone gather at the north gate. We must break through Jiangning County." "Yes." The war banners fluttered as they set out without delay. At this time, Chu Qingyan was already leading people towards the stairs on the side of the city gate tower. The soldiers guarding the side immediately raised their weapons to block, but their opponents were wolves. The stairs weren't wide and the soldiers had no place to use their weapons. They were so scared that they rolled down. Because they had come quickly and the sounds of fighting were heavy downstairs, the soldiers only discovered them when Chu Qingyan and the others came up. "You dare to come up without fear of death?" When Lu Xiang saw Chu Qingyan, he was first shocked and then sneered. "What's there to be afraid of? Didn't this young master already come up?" Chu Qingyan chuckled. Glutinous Rice Ball and the others standing by her feet took a step forward and hooted at Lu Xiang. When Lu Xiang and the others saw these wolves coming so close, they retreated a few steps in fright. However, Lu Xiang quickly realized that he had the advantage in numbers and became arrogant again. "Just a few wolves and they dare to fight against so many of us. Aren't they thinking too highly of themselves? Take her down, dead or alive. This general will reward you handsomely." Lu Xiang ordered after speaking. An aide at the side immediately said, "General, Sir Lei wants you to keep this person alive." Lu Xiang was already depressed from this battle. When he saw Chu Qingyan's relaxed appearance, he became even more impatient. He said, "When Sir Lei asks, just say that she was killed by mistake because the crowd was too chaotic." Due to his temperament, the aide did not dare to say anything more. Chu Qingyan was some distance away and did not know what they were mumbling about. She ordered Glutinous Rice Ball and the other wolves to be the vanguard and block the attacking soldiers. Meanwhile, she, Fong Lu, and the others leaped over the soldiers and directly approached Lu Xiang and the others. To catch bandits, one must first catch the leader. In the blink of an eye, Lu Xiang was right in front of them. He was instantly shocked. With one look, he could tell that the other party's martial arts were outstanding. He did not dare to stay any longer and ordered people to block the front while he prepared to go downstairs from the other side under the escort of his guards. When Fong Lu saw this, he stepped on everyone's shoulders and landed in front of Lu Xiang, blocking his way. Beautifully done. Chu Qingyan was not stingy with her praise. At this time, the sound of uniform footsteps came from the other side of the tower. She looked in the direction of the sound and felt something. Inadvertently, she met a pair of deep and affectionate eyes, as if relieved of a heavy burden. Chapter 9:12. The two of them looked at each other, their emotions surging in the smoke, breaking through all the obstacles in front of them. She finally understood what it meant to look at each other for 10,000 years. It turned out that it was not an exaggeration between lovers. Only those who had experienced it could understand the feeling. There were too many things they wanted to say after one night, but the two of them knew that this was not the time to talk about their feelings. They quickly turned their heads and returned to their battle state. In the eyes of outsiders, the two of them only looked at each other for a moment before moving away. Xiao? Why is he here? Didn't we fall into an ambush? Lu Xiang had met Xiao once many years ago. Although it had been a long time, when he saw that familiar silver mask, the fear from the depths of his memory surged up. And behind Xiao was the Sichuan army. Lu Xiang felt a sense of despair. There was only one explanation now. Their people were being attacked from two sides. Master Lei? Yes, Master Lei. Lu Xiang hurriedly turned to look. Quickly find Master Lei and ask His Highness the Crown Prince to send us reinforcements. How could 15,000 soldiers resist an army of 30,000? Feng Lu did not give Lu Xiang time to breathe. He drew his sword and dealt with him, vowing to take revenge for all the humiliation he had suffered in the past 6 months. Chu Qingyan glanced at the city gate tower and ordered, "Glutinous rice balls, you deal with the soldiers guarding the city." Ayo, the glutinous rice balls swarmed up. They were focused on dealing with the soldiers attacking the city below and were caught off guard. They could no longer stop the people below the city. Chu Qingyan led people to deal with the guards around Lu Xiang. This freed up Feng Lu's energy to intercept and kill Lu Xiang. The round logs heavily and powerfully attacked the city gate again and again. Without the city guards blocking them, the Sichuan soldiers quickly climbed up the city gate tower and gave Chu Qingyan and the others a helping hand. An hour later, the Sichuan soldiers broke through the gate and the city was breached. Lu Xiang was captured by Feng Lu. The army of 10,000 was leaderless and fled in all directions. The Sichuan soldiers swarmed forward. 30,000 against 15,000. Whether it was in terms of numbers or in terms of competition, it was an absolute suppression. What was left was a battle between humans. Therefore, Chu Qingyan asked Xiao and Bai Yutong to gather their eagle soldiers and wolf soldiers so that they did not need to participate in the battle. Soon, the animals retreated from the battlefield. When everything was about to be settled, Chu Qingyan stood on top of the city gate tower with a long spear in her hand. She looked down at the people sitting on horseback with joy in her eyes. When Xiao entered the city, he raised his head and looked at the slender figure who carried a heavy burden on her shoulders. He suddenly smiled. One of them was dressed in black and had black hair. One of them was dressed in silver and had black hair. She stood proudly and looked at him gently. Her fiery red lips gave her a smile that could topple cities. It was as if they did not hear the battle cries around them, nor did they see the clash of weapons. Only the two of them were left in this world. I used my actions to prove myself that I can be by your side. You used your actions to prove that I made the right choice back then. The battle lasted until the afternoon before it was basically over. Chu Qingyan walked toward Xiao. Before she reached his side, she saw many soldiers surrounding him. They were all holding matters in their hands, waiting for him to make a decision. She could not help but stop in her tracks. She watched as he was surrounded by the crowd and resolved the matters at hand with a clear mind. To fall in love with such a proud son of heaven, not only did she have to see his good points, but she also had to let others appreciate his brilliance. This was true love. She crossed her arms and smiled, preparing to deal with the matters at hand. She was not free now and could idle around. Before she turned around, an arm was placed on her shoulder. She subconsciously wanted to attack, but when she smelled the fragrance of herbs on the other party's body, she relaxed her body. "Little girl, not bad?" Qingyan Lua's laughter rang in her ears. Chu Qingyan pushed her hand away and raised her eyebrows. "I'm very dirty. Are you sure you want to hug me?" As soon as she said that, Qing Yanluo's mouth twitched. She quickly retracted her hand, but her mouth did not stop. Just now, I saw how you handled the Southern Song soldiers neatly with your sword. You looked amazing. Chu Qingyan beamed. Is that so? It's rare to hear such praise from you. I'm so lucky. Don't talk nonsense with me. Cheng Yanluo rolled her eyes at her, then continued, Do you know what those soldiers were saying when I walked past them? Chu Qingyan raised her eyebrows. How would I know? Cheng Yanluo glared at her, but in the next moment she happily said, I heard them say that if it weren't for you, this city wouldn't have been taken down so easily. Chu Qingyan shook her head. I don't dare to claim credit for that. The ones who really contributed were everyone. If you really want me to say it, Little Hai, Little Annoyance, and the others have contributed greatly. Cheng Yanluo shrugged when she saw how humble she was. She rubbed her chin and looked in the direction of Little Hai and the others. She couldn't help but sigh. Speaking of which, where did you adopt these darlings from? Each one of them is like a monkey spirit. To be honest, if Little Annoyance didn't bring the wolves here today, we wouldn't have been able to escape. Everything has spirituality, and Little Hai and the others are no exception. Actually, I'm also very surprised. Before Little Hai and Bai Yutong arrived, I thought we were going to lose our lives here. I didn't expect things to turn around. They're the ones who contributed greatly this time. Chu Qingyan followed Cheng Yanluo's gaze and saw that Little Hai and Little Annoyance were making a ruckus again. They were probably fighting over something. After so long, they were already used to it. However, it would be hard for anyone to imagine that these were the ferocious beasts that had led their companions to kill the enemies. Because at this time, they were so docile, but their bodies were a little bigger. Qingyan, sometimes I feel sorry for you. Other girls can freely and willfully live the life they want, but you can only fight and kill without a day of peace. But sometimes, I feel very lucky for you that you have so many friends and family by your side. Cheng Yanluo looked at the person in front of her lovingly. In terms of age, she was a few years older than Qingyan, but in terms of responsibility and pressure, she was far inferior to Qingyan. Every time she saw so many girls of the same age going for a walk in the early spring, admiring the lotus flowers in the midsummer, picking leaves in the autumn, and painting plum blossoms in the late winter, she couldn't help but think how wonderful it would be if Qingyan could also enjoy such a life. In the past, she also had such thoughts, but not as strongly as today. When she saw Qingyan killing the enemies at the rear, she was really worried that she would be injured. After so many years of living together, she had long regarded Qingyan as her own younger sister. Chu Qingyan felt joy rising from the bottom of her heart, but more than that, she was touched. You're not a fish, how can you know the joy of a fish? You're not me, how can you know that I don't know the joy of a fish? If everyone's life is the same, then when you walk on the road, the people you pass by are all copies of you, or you are the copies of others. Then what's the meaning of life? Since I've chosen to walk ahead, I have to brave the wind and rain. Moreover, I have you by my side. The lost road ahead, I don't feel lonely. She reached out and held Yanluo's hand, smiling with curved eyes. Chapter 9:13. The group temporarily used the governor's mansion as a place to rest and discuss matters. At this time, the meeting room was lit all night long. Chu Qingyan was one of the main contributors this time, and she received many praises from the soldiers. She was rarely praised in such a serious manner, and she was a little shy. However, everyone's attitude before and after the battle was indeed different. She deeply understood that most of the time, one's abilities spoke louder than the others. Otherwise, they wouldn't have specially invited her to tonight's meeting. At this time, Fong Lu returned from his business. Your Highness, our people went to pursue the 5,000 soldiers and found that they had returned to the Southern Blue Army, so I returned. Xiao Su nodded, not surprised. He turned to ask Mu Ling, how's the interrogation of Lu Xiang? Mu Ling stepped forward and replied. After 2 hours of interrogation, he couldn't resist and confessed. This time, they learned of our plan through a person named Rei Luo. This person is Prince of Nansong's trusted aide. Many things are handled through him. But Lu Xiang doesn't know where Rei Luo learned of our plan. He only knows that we will carry out a strategy of cooperation from the inside and the outside. Rei Luo asked him to delay the attacking army. This battle isn't the main point. The most important thing is to get rid of you. However, Lu Xiang mentioned that the Prince of Nansong had studied your tactics many years ago. Presumably, this plan was deliberated by the Prince of Nansong. After Mu Ling finished speaking, she retreated again. Xiao Su listened attentively, deep in thought. Your Highness, I just had people count the number of people. We captured thousands of enemy prisoners, including many soldiers. The deputy of the 1st Battalion reported. Xiao Su nodded. Detain these people first. If there are any who disobey, deal with them yourself. The deputy of the 1st Battalion retreated. Your Highness, this time we have about 2,000 casualties. The injured soldiers have been arranged to treat their wounds, and the soldiers who died on the battlefield have been buried. Another soldier stepped forward and said in a solemn tone. This time, the number of casualties was the lowest in the past 6 months. However, the most important thing was that Chu Qingyan and her pets were there. Otherwise, the casualties would have been more than this, and they might not have been able to take down the city. While everyone was mourning, they were also rejoicing. And very well handled. We cannot let the soldiers be disappointed. A dark light flashed through Xiao Su's eyes. We will rest and reorganize. Leave 10,000 people to guard Jiangning Commandery. The rest will depart for Qingqiao City at noon tomorrow. Yes. The generals retreated in an orderly manner. Just as Hua Ling was about to go down, he was stopped by his master. Master, do you have any other orders? Hua Ling turned around and asked. How are your injuries? Xiao Su's gaze fell on his blood-stained left arm, his tone faintly filled with concern. Hua Ling was stunned for a moment before he said in a flattered manner, It's just like being bitten by a mosquito. It's nothing serious. Xiao Su raised his eyebrows. This mosquito is quite powerful. It caused so much blood with one sting. Hua Ling chuckled. Go down and let ethereal bandage your wounds. For today and tomorrow, leave it to Jin Xin. Xiao Su waved at him. Hua Ling acknowledged in a loud voice. He left while rubbing his head in a daze. If this was 4 years ago, Master would not have asked him. Maybe after being with the little princess for so long, Master had learned to care for others. Chu Qingyan had been observing this master-servant relationship from the side, but she had not expected the big ice cube to drag her person into the sea in the blink of an eye. However, the wood spirit's injuries were indeed quite severe, so she had no choice but to borrow Jinxin for the time being. Come here. At this time, a voice sounded. She looked around in confusion before confirming that this person was calling her. She walked in front of him. There was a table between them. What? She put her hands behind her back and looked at him with a smile. Give me your hand. His calm voice had a trace of coaxing. She pursed her lips. She was not bewitched by his low and pleasant voice. She continued to smile as she said, pulling and pulling in broad daylight, where is the propriety? It's already dark. Xiao Su was both angry and amused. She was rendered speechless. Under his insistence, she could only obediently reach out her hand. How did you get hurt? When he saw the 2 scratches on her arm, Xiao Su's pupils shrank and his voice became softer. Although the wounds were not deep enough to see the bone, it was still shocking to see this kind of wound on such white jade skin. In the past, even if she had a little bruise, his heart would ache, much less this kind of wound. She honestly said, I'm not too sure. When I got off the battlefield, I found that I was bleeding. Xiao Su looked at her blood-stained face. Although her face was covered in soot and dirt, it could not hide her smooth skin. When he thought about how she was supporting the entire situation by herself, his heart ached. I'll take care of it for you. If it hurts, bear with it. Xiao Su took the wound medicine from the table and brought her to him. Then, he carefully cleaned her wounds and applied the medicine. When he cleaned them, there was a burning pain. When the medicine was applied, there was a cooling comfort. In a short period of time, she felt as if she had died once. When she was scooped out of the water, her entire body was soaked. In this era, it was simply too torturous to not have anesthetics. Luckily, it's only my hand. She turned her hand over and said with lingering fear, "Girls all like to look beautiful. If these 2 wounds were left on other places, it would be even uglier. Later, I'll get Ethereal to prepare some scar removal ointment for you. Then, you won't have to worry about leaving a scar." Xiao Su said as he put away the medicine and gauze. Chu Qingyan nodded. Then, she moved closer to his eyes and said in a threatening tone, "Do you think that I'm ugly with a scar, If you were a little uglier, I wouldn't have to worry about you attracting suitors." Xiao Su reached out and pinched her delicate nose until she couldn't breathe. Only then did he shake his head and release her with a smile. After Chu Qingyan saved her nose, she rolled her eyes at him. "This lady is as beautiful as a flower. This little flaw is nothing. If it could be more perfect, this lady wouldn't mind." At this point, she blinked and said mischievously, "Anyway, even if I'm ugly, you'll still take care of me, right? Then I'll take care of you now. You stay by my side obediently and don't participate in the battle anymore. How about that?" Xiao Su hugged her waist and pulled her in front of him as he asked in a low and gentle voice. When she heard this, she almost lost herself in his voice. However, she quickly sobered up. This ice cube was using his beauty to trick her. Too much. She leaned on him and tilted her head. "The revolution hasn't succeeded yet. Comrade, how can you give up halfway? After we finish the battle, you can take care of me, okay? When the time comes, I'll be a rice worm and you'll be responsible for feeding me." Xiao Su knew that she was smart and wouldn't be easily persuaded by him. He could only agree in a low voice. "Okay, future rice worm." Chu Qingyan couldn't help but laugh. At this moment, someone knocked on the door. Chapter 9:14. Chu Qingyan withdrew from his embrace and helped him tidy up his collar. When he reached out to grab her, she nimbly dodged, her eyes hinting to him that there were still people outside and that he should restrain himself. Xiao Su's gaze circled around her body before he helplessly let her go. Just now, he only wanted her not to move so easily. If she tugged on her wound, he would have to rebandage it. "Come in." The person outside pushed open the door and came in. It was Fong Lu. "Your Highness, it's like this. The wolf pack and eagle pack are still in the city. May I ask how we should deal with them? Do we need someone to feed them?" When Fong Lu said this, he cast a look of admiration towards Chu Qingyan. When he caught a glimpse of them on the battlefield, he didn't think much of these big fellows. However, when he saw the pack of fierce beasts entrenched outside the residence, those who didn't have the courage would not dare to approach. Chu Qingyan only thought of them when she heard this and couldn't help but look towards Xiao Su. Xiao Su also looked at Chu Qingyan at this time. "What do you think? Let's go take a look first." "I haven't thanked them yet," Chu Qingyan suggested. Xiao Su nodded and the group went out the door. Usually, to be able to see 1 or 2 wolves was already enough to scare people out of their wits. Now, as far as the eye could see, there was a large pack of them, causing the wolf pack to be completely devoid of people. Even the commoners in the city could only watch from afar. If the wolves looked at them, they would all run away without a trace. When Chu Qingyan came out, she saw this scene. She didn't know whether to laugh or cry, but her eyes were still moist. How fortunate was she to be able to get the help of so many friends. At this time, when the Bai Yutong lying on the ground saw Chu Qingyan come out, their eyes lit up and they immediately rushed over. They jumped up and down around her, acting spoiled and cute, doing everything they could to get her attention. Chu Qingyan couldn't help but smile through her tears. These silly little fellows. At this time, the eagle pack perched on the tree trunk on the roof also looked over. Under the watchful eyes of the eagles, Little Hai slowly walked over in a domineering manner. The eagle's soldier thought to himself, "This is how a king should act. Your wolf king doesn't even look like one." Little Hai walked to Chu Qingyan's side. After being reserved for a while, it slapped Bai Yutong away and squeezed its head under its master's palm, proudly rubbing against it. The eagle's soldier almost fell from his head. "My king, What happened to your majesty and dominance? The eagle soldier cursed inwardly. 10,000 alpacas galloped past. When Fong Lu and the others saw the scene, they momentarily forgot their fear of these two races and could not help but laugh. If it wasn't for the feathers and fur, they would really look like jealous children. Thank you for today. Chu Qingyan thanked them sincerely. Xiao Su stood beside her, his expression much gentler, unlike his usual cold attitude towards them. Oh, swish, swish. Wolf translation, Master is too polite. Eagle translation, no big deal, they are just a bunch of stupid humans. At this time, a few of the wolves suddenly stopped lying down obediently. Instead, they stood up somewhat anxiously and opened their mouths wide to howl. Glutinous Rice Ball immediately turned around and barked a few words at them. Those few lowered their heads and continued lying down, their eyes full of resentment. What's wrong with them? Although it was very novel to see the wolves listen to orders like soldiers, Chu Qingyan was more curious about the reason. Maybe they are hungry. Xiao Su deduced. Chu Qingyan looked at Bai Yutang and the others, only to see them squatting pitifully on the ground. It looked like they were indeed hungry. After doing so much physical exertion today, it was normal for them to be hungry. However, these three were able to command them to fight and restrain them from attacking the civilians while enduring hunger. It was really commendable. Chu Qingyan pondered for a moment. Just as she was about to instruct people to prepare something to reward these brave generals, a 7- or 8-year-old boy suddenly walked out from the crowd of onlookers. He was dressed plainly, and there were patches all over his head. He held a big pot in his hand and walked in front of Chu Qingyan, a pure smile appearing on his dirty face. Little brother, my mother killed the only chicken in the house and said that she wanted to give it to our wolf hero and eagle hero to eat. Can you help me give it to them? As he spoke, the little boy handed the pot over. Tears almost welled up in Chu Qingyan's eyes. She raised her head and turned back the tears, then lowered her head and touched his head, asking gently, "Aren't you afraid of them?" "No, the enemy is scary, but they are not. They are our saviors, I like them." The little boy smiled brightly. Chu Qingyan touched his head and took it gratefully. "Thank you." The little boy lowered his head and looked at the few squatting on the ground. He asked hesitantly, "Little brother, can I touch them?" "Sure." Chu Qingyan handed the pot to Fong Lu, then waved at Glutinous Rice Ball and the others. They ran happily to the little boy's side and let him touch them. The little boy thanked Chu Qingyan with satisfaction, then waved goodbye to the Bai Yutang. With the little boy taking the lead, many civilians quickly took out their food reserves, chickens, ducks, geese, and pigs, saying that they wanted to thank these heroes who did not know how to speak. Xiao Su immediately sent people to receive these things. After all, these wolf eagles were not as easy to discipline as soldiers. If these ferocious wolf eagles were left here, if they were really hungry, they might attack the civilians regardless of whether they were friend or foe. Chu Qingyan looked at the passionate civilians and felt a lot of emotions in her heart. Big Ice Cube, actually, the civilians' thoughts are very pure. They will be good to whoever is good to them. But often, the people in power will have nothing to do with this. Water can carry a boat, but it can also capsize it. They are not willing to understand this principle. Xiao Su continued and said lightly. Chu Qingyan sighed helplessly. At this time, the soldiers had already gone down to distribute food to the wolf and eagle soldiers. She suddenly looked around and frowned uneasily. "What's wrong?" Xiao Su asked with concern as soon as he turned around and saw that her expression was not right. "Have you noticed that we haven't seen Little Annoyance since we entered the city?" As soon as Chu Qingyan said this, Xiao Su recalled that the last time he saw Little Annoyance was before entering the city. He gently held her shoulder and comforted her. "Don't worry, I will send people to check its whereabouts." "Okay." She nodded, but the worry in her eyes could not be concealed. She hoped that nothing would happen to Little Annoyance, or she would feel guilty toward Bai Yutang and the others. Just as Xiao Su was instructing people to search, Chu Qingyan seemed to see a white figure running from the crowd. Oh no, it was two white figures. One was Little Annoyance, she recognized it. The other seemed to be taller and more powerful, and its footsteps were more vigorous. Its fur was snow-white and there was not a single strand of mixed hair on its body. It was very pure, but its eyes revealed an inviolable majesty and dominance. Was this still a snow wolf? Wherever it passed, the wolves all retreated, as if they were kneeling in submission. Several alpacas flew over Chu Qingyan's head. Who was it? You're tuning in to the Passion Pages YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.